Clash Royale champion takes it. Sergio Ramos wins.
Huge. And nothing to stop the Hog Rider. It's going to get swing on the tombstone.
That's it. Nobody's the first ever CRL World Champions.
And there you have it. The fire goes up. It's a coins this time. 293.
Nothing to do with it.
Team Liquid is going to be your CRL
Champion. Team Liquid is done in surgical go.
117 HP remaining. EQ trying to make room. Team Queso completes the reverse sweep, and they are your 2020 Clash Royale League World Champions.
From regional champions to world champions, from ladder gods to ladder upsets, we have a little bit of everything in today's show. This is Sunday, the monthly final for May here at Clash Royale League. It's a stacked lineup. We will see potentially someone take control of that spot, that who is the best in the world, because, oh yeah, today we have some killer matchups. I'm Rich Slayton, that's Andrew Guy. It's going to be a whole lot of fun, and Andrew, we get to see some of the best players that we've wanted to see go head-to-head do it right here in CRL.
Every single month, you, myself, Josh, and Eric, and of course all of you guys watching get the pleasure of watching the best players in the world battle head-to-head in Clash Royale. But of course, as Rich is talking about, we're already through day one, and we have some really exciting stuff coming your way. Before we get into the action, let's talk about our format. A big part of these matches and the success of the players is utilizing and taking advantage of our duels format. Each player brings 4 decks to the competition. That decks must consist of 32 unique cards. Each deck can only be played once per match. And of course, these are best of 3. So the first player to get 2 wins with those dual decks will be moving on in our double elimination format. Richard.
Yeah, and this format has been interesting. You know, there's a lot of questions coming into this year as to whether or not what we're looking at was going to really produce the top players. Well, if you see who's in the top 8 every single month, almost without fail, every one of those names is a top-tier, world-class player. And they're playing for money, they're playing for points. One of the players here already has won that $20,000, Mohamed Light. And of course, we have another player, Sandbox, who came in second. Not to mention, we have Samuel Basoto, who has been knocking on that door a few times. 3 trips to the top 8 so far. Of course, those leaderboard points, Andrew, are absolutely critical because those are what determine whether or not you make our World Finals. And you can see right now on the list today, Mohamed Light, we have Samuel Basoto, Sandbox, Viper, Ruben. So many of the players who are here right now are in that race for the top of that leaderboard.
And what's so incredible about the leaderboard is you don't actually have to be here every single month at the finals to be on top of that leaderboard. A couple of those people we haven't even seen yet in the CRL monthly finals, but they have done such great work throughout the month in our qualifier. And of course, as Richard said very early on, I called you Richard twice today. I know I'm going to get in trouble. On our ladder, about getting in that top 1,000 on ladder, those guys are earning so many points. And I'm excited to see a lot of them come to the competition. That's another great thing is, as you said, we know about all of the people that come to CRL monthly finals, but there is that chance for someone, a no-name like Ta last month, to come up and take that 20 grand.
Yeah, go ahead and every single month make that top 1,000 ladder, and maybe it's you here next time. And Andrew, talking about who's here right now, though, we have a marquee matchup in our winners bracket, and one that you can vote on at home. It's going to be Ruben and Samuel Basoto, both with a life to give in that upper bracket. So go ahead in the chat, write hashtag Ruben or hashtag Samuel up until their match. We're getting those votes in. Tell us who you think is going to win. Will it be the defending world champion of Team Queso, or will it be one of the top all-time ladder greats with over 30 top 10 finishes? Andrew, I don't know if you're going to be doing that one later, so we'll have to take a look at those votes. And that one, again, is going to be one where you're back on here for that matchup. Ruben and Samuel Basoto, the winner, will be guaranteed a spot in the top 2. So that's a $10,000 match. And then coming up next, though, Andrew, Hire and Viper, and then Sandbox and Mohamed Light.
Yeah, Ruben and Sam have been basically perfect through the day. They each have a life to give, as you said. That lower bracket, though, really, really great matchups. And that's where we're going to start today. All of those matches are going to be for money and, of course, for elimination or moving forward. We gave away $4,000 yesterday. We got $46,000 more to give away today, and I cannot wait to get started.
Well, you're going to have to wait, Andrew, because we're going to say bye to you for a little while. You'll come back on for that big winners bracket matchup. But for now, we're going to go ahead and invite on the world champion coach, longtime member of the Clash Royale community, and phenomenal streamer over on Twitch. Please put your hands together for my good friend, Eric Benamou, EB7, joining the broadcast. Eric, we've got some great ones, and kicking things off today. Man, I mean, you think about how good we are just at the top with that Samuel Basoto Ruben match that we're not going to get to cast, but the stuff we have coming up is also world class as well.
It absolutely is. And on top of that, these are elimination matches. This is what I live for. This is my favorite day of the month, especially in this lower bracket, because yes, that top match with Samuel and Ruben is amazing, but these players are playing for their lives, and these points are so important. Like you and Andrew said earlier on, you don't even have to make the qualifiers, the monthly finals, to have a shot, but getting these extra points is so key.
And this is a big one here for both of these guys. Viper, as you saw, is in the running, a big part of that due to his success so far in those overall in ladder play. But people forget that Higher is also totally in the mix, and a great performance this weekend will definitely be enough to vault him up very, very standings.
And I'm telling you something, to do what Higher has done throughout the years is so difficult. We see a lot of newer players, and we see a lot of players that have had some success in CRL and then other years fall off a little bit. Higher has been at the top for so long. I played against him in that World Finals final, right? And he's here again, and that is so impressive to me. Really, the fact that he's here fighting again in the top 8 is awesome.
So Minor both directions, Viper top of your screen, Higher at the bottom, although very different looks at Minor decks here, Eric.
Yeah, very, very different. One with Loon, one with that Goblin Hut, and not a bad start for Higher here. I just want to see how he defends later on in the game, because yes, he has the Goblin Hut and the Magic Archer, but they're not high DPS cards for the Loon. And I like that he's starting with this Mega Knight. He knows that there's not going to be a Loon coming back at him. There's no real pressure. And he has just enough of an Elixir lead right now to make it pressuring. So let's see what kind of support he puts behind. Mega Knight down with Flying Machine in support. Poison not in cycle to hit the Flying Machine off either. So at the moment, going to have to just hold on for a second, and that Musketeer will take care of business. P.E.K.K.A versus Mega Knight. It's a pretty classic matchup there, Eric. And obviously, P.E.K.K.A works pretty nicely against Mega Knight, but what do you think about the overall matchup between these two decks? I love what Viper brought here. I think it's something that this meta has been asking for a while. You can still use the traditional win conditions, but when you add P.E.K.K.A, it makes it so much more viable and useful in this type of meta where you see a lot of Elite Barbarians, you see a lot of that Mega Knight, and I really like that he came out with the win condition he's comfortable with in Loon, but adapted it to what he might see here, and I really like it.
Good poison here out of Viper. Gonna get a lot on both sides. No connection from that balloon, but does get death damage on the right-hand side. Gonna be down to 12-21 as we go into double Elixir time. It is the Hog Xe NATO player who, by the way, looking at that deck right now there, Eric, looks like maybe that's gonna be a possibility for later in this BO3.
I really hope we see it. I think in elimination matches, it's where you do want to have at least one comfort deck, and he's so good with it. You know that on ladder, we see a lot of people, you know, kind of, it's not analysis, they call it a snipe, and they try it at Viper, and he still wins with the deck. So why not risk it, especially if you go up 1-0, which it seems like he might be able to do here. He just needs to hold on a little bit more, get that minor chip and some death damage from the Loon, and it should be game for him.
Has to drop a lot here on this defense to keep that balloon from not connecting. That is a ton of poison value going the opposite direction, but Elixir is still fairly even as the Minor connects. Going into our final 10 seconds of regulation time, lead being held right now by Viper and extended. Question now is, can Higher battle back?
Yeah, and he's getting what you said exactly, a lot of poison value. He's making every single poison not only be on that Goblin Hut, and the way he's doing that is always minoring first, forcing out a defense on that, and then using the poison. He's playing very, very smart Clash Royale here, and it's definitely paying off.
Zappy's now doing a good job here against this balloon. I think death damage, is it just within range here? And yes, it is, 347. So this is a key moment here for Higher. Can the former WEDGM 2v2 star hold off for a few more seconds and get some damage down?
That's it.
The time is ticking away, and yeah, that's going to be it.
That's it, and I'll give Higher props. He caught, I think, 3 minors with Magic Archers, so it's not an easy thing to do, but at the end of the day, Viper knows every single interaction. He knew the Zappies were there, and he did not mind to Loon at the bridge, knowing that it would still get the death damage. He knew that every time he minored, if it did get caught with the magic archer, as long as he's snowballed, not only will it slow down the tower, it will take care of the magic archer and get 2 hits. Very, very like smart Clash Royale out of Viper.
So a big game number 1 for Viper. He has the game advantage. He's up against, not to call Hire an easy out, because Hire is a world-class player, no question about that, but certainly not as frightening, at least today, as maybe Ruben or Samuel or Mohamed Light would be. Do you feel like this game number 2 is the place where Viper says, you know what, let's show everyone that I'm unbeatable with my deck?
I would go for it. You don't really lose anything. I think every time you play that deck, you have an advantage. We've seen Anaban do it for so long. We've seen Igor and Lapo run Mortar against the toughest of matchups and make it look easy, especially when all the pressure is on Hire. Why not go for it? Risk a little bit. And it's funny you say, like I say, risk a little bit when he's playing his comfort deck, but it's a risk in getting hard countered, and I would still go for it.
So interesting Pekka Loon variation. You know, you're talking about Anaban there, and his Pekka Loon deck is certainly one that's well known. Talk to me a bit about what we just saw from Viper, because obviously Minor Musk Loon with Snowball's a very common combination, but this one was interesting with the Pekka mixed in, with the Poison mixed in. Certainly kind of like marrying 2 archetypes in Minor Pekka Poison and Minor Musk Loon.
I think it all came down to adaptation. That's what this is about. He adapted perfectly to the meta that's in right now. He knows that he wants to play Loon. He is one of those players that can play those fast cycle decks like we've seen with Hog. He played a different type of Hog yesterday. So Loon fits perfectly into his deck choice. And all he did was say, you know what? Let me add on a Pekka and a Poison that's going to work very well for me, especially if he uses a Graveyard, if he comes in with Mega Knight. And it's exactly what happened.
You know, on the other side of this, I'm going through the full makeup of what we just saw from Hire. A very strange, I mean, it's a very heavy version of Minor Control. What do you think he was trying to predict in this one? This is not a deck that we see often.
It really isn't, and I'm not exactly sure what he was looking for. Maybe it goes well against that Hog deck or a Hoggy's deck in general, but overall, I'm not really sure what he's looking for. It doesn't make all that much sense to me. When I look at both decks, one really, you know, in Vipers, I can tell, okay, this actually gets a lot of good matchups. Hires, I'm not too sure what he was looking for.
Oh, that's a Hog, so that's a good start here if we're going to be seeing what we want to see from Viper. King Tower activation, pretty easy there, so maybe Hire thinking the same thing we were thinking, going with the Fish Boy here in game number 2. And looks like it's not going to be the classic Viper deck, but a Hog cycle variation, probably EQ here for the Frenchman.
Yeah, it's probably going back to EQ, and I don't mind it because at the end of the day, it is Hog. It's something that he's very comfortable with, and it's funny to see because a lot of people, when they see Fisherman, including you and I, we would get a little bit disheartened. Viper was unfazed by the fact that there was Fisherman on the other side, and it seems like he's just so used to playing it that it doesn't really bother him.
This will be interesting. Hire did, I believe, run this very similar version of this bridge spam deck yesterday. Trying to go through and see if I can find that original game. But a fun bridge spam variation here with Fireball and the Fisherman, and we've seen, of course, that Fisherman Pekka combination working out very well.
It did really work out well, and at this point, Viper is going to have to win basically off cycles. He's going to have to make sure that he always has something in cycle for that split lane push. It's going to be very, very tough for him. Get that Valk down, tank those archers, and then just cycle as many Hogs as possible to get that chip damage and win it off with spells late on in the game, but it's not easy by all means.
So as we go past the midway point of regulation time, it is the lead so far for Viper, courtesy of those Hog shots in the right-hand lane. But now we are going to get some battle back here on the side of Hire. Dual lane pressure, 1885 to the left, and Viper, I don't believe, happy or expecting that final Barbarian hit on the left-hand side.
Yeah, and it's tough for him because, yes, he defended. Even though he defended pretty well, he still took a lot of damage, and he's down 4 elixirs. So he's realizing now that he's going to have to figure something out to make sure that these defenses aren't as expensive as they have been early on in this game, but I'm not sure he can actually do that.
You know, I'm thinking that Hire must have run this in the top 32 potentially, as opposed to being here, but we'll keep an eye and see if I can figure out what game that was in. And here we go. We got the Battle Ram going on the right-hand lane. Tesla pick up with Skeleton Surround. So far, the lead's slight for Viper, but it does feel like the deeper this goes, the more difficult territory it gets for him.
Yeah, and he has to be very careful on those skellies. That's 2 times that he put them a little bit high for my liking, and the Mother Witch just ends up getting free Hoggies put on the field. This is a nice log out of him, but every defense is getting tougher.
Valkyrie going to get 2 swings on the left-hand side, gets that second one in. Mother Witch sets up to the right-hand side. Final 10 seconds approaching. On our way to sudden death overtime. At the moment, pretty even 16-16 to 18-02 in that right-hand side. And a slight lead on the left-hand lane right now for the former WEGM player in Higher.
Yeah, and very nice Val coming in there before the Skellies actually went down, and that's what I was talking about. As long as he's careful with those Skellies, does not give Mother Witch extra value, they are actually pretty nice defense, and he did exactly that. He Valked on top of the Mother Witch and then Skellied. He's finally figured out the correct way to play this defense, but that Ghost got pushed to the right because of the Hoggy. That
forces out some extra Elixir, and now an advantage going to Higher. This is exactly what Viper wanted to avoid here. P.E.K.K.A down, and those skeletons getting taken care of by that tower. So this is a nice Elixir advantage, and Higher choosing to split lanes here and go with that battle ram to the left-hand side.
Yeah, and this is going to be tough. The Fisherman actually doesn't lock onto the Hog, so not all that bad. That should still get a hit, and it does. And now it might just be cycle as many spells as quickly as possible to actually win this match.
A lot going down on that right-hand side. Royal Delivery in response. Battle ram not going to get on through. Mother Witch staying in the game, though.
The defenses coming out of Viper are so impressive. If he plays like this for the rest of the day, he might actually be able to take out what you were saying earlier on, those very impressive players like Mo Light, like Ruben and Samuel. I cannot believe he just defended this long so well.
Big overspend required from Higher just to keep that damage off the tower. P.E.K.K.A still fairly healthy. Fisherman now going to be working on the Valkyrie, but that EQ cycle going to get in there very quickly, and you see Viper just playing cards as fast as he can. We'll take one more Earthquake to finish things off. That should be the game. There it is, Viper with a quick 2-0, and he will move on one more stage here, joining that top 4 for our monthly final.
He is so impressive with Hog Rider. I mean, he just put on a clinic. We've seen Samuel, who's still in this tournament, be one of the best with Hog Rider, but when you watch Viper play, it seems like he has a perfect understanding. Even though there was P.E.K.K.A, there was Ewiz, there was Fisherman, it seemed like he always placed it in the right tile at the right moment to always get one hit at least. It's crazy.
It's one of those things where you kind of look at both the Fisherman and the P.E.K.K.A, and you feel like there's got to be enough viability here where you're not going to be out of cycle for controlling that Hog Rider. But yeah, as you were talking about it, the timing and the placement were so key, and there were a couple of moments, one in particular at the end that you called out, where that Fisherman was a bit high, went to the Tesla instead, and this was just a lot to control here. But I think the big story, Eric, and you mentioned it a couple of times, was the defense of Viper. Absolutely pristine.
Yeah, that is one of the best defense we've seen all weekend long. It's not easy at all. When you look at the split lane and then you actually look at both decks, he always has to use that Royal Delivery onto the P.E.K.K.A and the Mother Witch, so he can't use it onto the other split lane. And even then, the Skellies, you have to be very careful with the Mother Witch in play, and he always had perfect timing on everything. I'm very impressed with Viper, especially knowing this is an elimination match, and as much experience as he has on ladder, he is a rookie to CRL, and to play like that against a veteran is very impressive.
Yeah, I mean, definitely not one to buckle under the pressure is Higher, but Viper, the one who steps up to it today. Here was our matchup from game number 1, and this one was so fascinating. 2 decks that, you know, we've kind of seen certain combinations, certain deck sets become popular. This was a big aberration overall, and it started right here, Eric.
Yeah, this one's a little bit tricky for me because when I look straight at the decks, Hires just doesn't seem like it's gonna win very many matchups. I'm not sure what he was looking for. I would love to, you know, really talk to him at some point and see what it was, but Viper's deck just was at an advantage the whole time. I think it's a better deck composition, and not only did he win the match playing better, but he won the match in adaptation to this meta.
Yeah, very fun deck out of Viper here. And then moving on into game number 2, the question was, would Viper go on to that comfort deck? And of course didn't go quite to the Hog XC NATO. Still time for that one, everyone, if you're waiting at home, but instead going here with this version of Hog Cycle, and just able to stay ahead specifically of both that P.E.K.K.A and that Fisherman. And those Fisherman pulls, once King Tower is already activated, certainly hard to hit perfectly, but it definitely felt like Viper was one step ahead the whole way through.
Yeah, and even though it wasn't his comfort deck per se, you can tell Hog in general is just his comfort. He played perfectly. There is nothing I could say that there was any mistakes. Maybe early on, 1 or 2 Skelly placements that he fixed very quickly, realized that if he's going to win the match, he cannot add more pressure to himself by having to defend those Hoggies. And then it was just perfection all the way through, and Viper deserves to move on.
Let's go ahead and take a look at the bracket as we're going to see Higher eliminated down here in the lower bracket. This will be the end of his journey. Walks away with some good money and some good points towards that World Finals, but Viper now does move on to the top 4 and only has to win one more to make that top 3, but it's a tough road to that Grand Championship. Coming up next, he will find his opponent in either Soundbox or Mohamed Light, and this is another phenomenal matchup. Wow. Mohamed Light may be the #1 player of 2021, and Sandbox may be the Rookie of the Year, certainly making a case for it so far with his second monthly finals appearance.
This could very well be a finals match. It has everything that you want. It has the best player in the world at the moment, in my opinion. Like you said, the Rookie of the Year, and someone that a lot of people expected to do great things. Definitely Tribe expected it because they signed him before he started, really popping off. And it's 2 people that have played in finals, 2 people that could be in every monthly finals with their skill level. And on top of that, I'm very, very excited to possibly see Mo face off against Viper. If you're on Twitter at any point, you know that they answer to each other's tweets all day. They're good friends. So if they do match up, it'd be very, very exciting for me to see those mind games, especially when you know someone that much.
That one's coming up next, but speaking of exciting matchups, of course, we still have our winners bracket final between Ruben and Samuel Basoto, a banger of a matchup, and you can get in on it right now. Go ahead in the chat, type either #Ruben or #Samuel. Make sure you use that hashtag or your vote won't count. Go ahead, throw your vote. Tell us who you think is going to win. Will it be the defending world champion? Will it be the 30-plus times top 10 finisher on ladder? You tell us right now. And, of course, we'll be getting to that matchup in a little bit. But coming up first, the one that you're really excited about, one that we're both pretty excited about, Sandbox. Tribe, again, has made, especially in the last year or so, starting with the monster roster that they signed last year for CRL and continuing on, they really seem to have doubled down on their recruiting efforts.
They definitely have, and I think, like you said, the talent on this roster is amazing, and it might be some of the reason why they're finding so much success, right? When you practice against the best, it makes everyone around you better, and I think Tribe did a phenomenal job in really doubling down on 2021 and seeing what works. And I love seeing E-Giant straight off the bat for Mo Light. It's not something you expect out of him, but it's so strong right now.
It's so strong, and you talk about some of those aggressive early plays. You see Sandbox throwing out Miner and the wall breakers early, and Mohamed Light going, oh, cool, I don't have to worry about that. And look at the Elixir advantage. We didn't get the damage, but now going into the first minute of gameplay, almost 4 Elixir up, and that's why Mohamed Light is one of the top players in the world.
And it's not often you see a pro player start off with E-Giant in single Elixir. It is a card that can cost you the game, but it's what you said. He recognized what was already on the board, that he didn't have to worry about taking too much damage, and he played that early on, but I don't expect to see very many more E-Giants at this point. I think he's going to focus on defending, and then once it doesn't get into double Elixir, it could get very, very tricky for Sandbox. That DPS is just not there with this deck.
Mo leaking just a little bit, 1.6 so far, so some of that advantage now given up. Prince going to be far up ahead, picked up by the Spear Goblins. That's going to reach the midway point of regulation time. The lead's currently going for Sandbox in that right-hand lane, but it's going to be a difficult one to maintain.
Yeah, and this is going to be it. After this full rotation of cards is when you're going to see Mo Light go in with that E-Giant. He's going to have a Lightning ready most likely. And there it is, a little bit earlier than I thought it would be. Maybe a NATO to bring everything together onto that. There it is. That's the right way to play the E-Giant. And watch out.
And here, we're going to get a little bit of damage from Mohamed Light, but more importantly, look at the Elixir difference as we go into double Elixir time, ahead by, again, almost 4. So a guy who's known for being a cycle player, known for being a minor player, in this case, going very, very different and showing that Mohamed Light is exceptionally versatile in this game.
And it's funny, right, when you look at that E-Giant health, you said it and I was thinking it, a little bit of damage, and that little bit of damage turned into 600 damage. When that gets onto your tower, it is so hard to actually mitigate it because it not only zaps, but then it also hits, it slows down your tower, and it's just very, very, very strong.
And again, look at this difference. 2.5 Elixir more leaked by Mohamed Light than his opponent, but the amount that's being forced to be spent by Sandbox right now to contend with these E-Giants makes up that difference every single time. So as we go into sudden death overtime, double and triple on its way, Sandbox does have the lead, but it's going to feel more and more precarious.
Yeah, every single time he has to defend, it's just way too much spent. And I think that Tesla was just a little bit of an overspend. I would have loved to see him trust his defense a little bit more. It seemed like he could have taken the game into his own hands if he just didn't spend that right there.
And that's a cheeky little NATO
Yeah.
there out of Sandbox. Nice log as well. Lots of damage getting through, 873. One more good defense, and he could put himself within striking range.
Yeah, and I'm not, the only thing that I say that I'm not loving out of Mo right now is the fact that he hasn't been using his spells. He hasn't been getting a lot of value out of the nados. He's doubling down on troops, but I think when you play this type of deck, you want to use those nados a lot more to your advantage, and watch out with that Prince.
That was a game-saving kite, it feels like,
Yeah.
right there. There was so much on the board. Sandbox with an excellent wall breakers kite, not easy to pull off in perfection like that, and that has kept him alive for the moment. And now adding to the lead is Sandbox, chipping this thing into be under 700, maybe under 600 HP. What an exciting turn here.
It seems like this is it, right? For Sandbox, if you defend this, you win the match. I don't know if Mo can actually hold on much longer, but look how healthy these are, and 2 E-Giants on the board.
NATO's both direction. Log trying to push back
Wow.
the cycle. The management of the cycle right now from Sandbox is amazing, but can it hold on? We've seen one unbelievable piece of defense. Does he have it in him twice? NATO to pull back. Prince coming in. That's going to be a very dangerous Prince. Log on the right-hand side, 35 seconds. This is unbelievable, Eric.
Yeah, this is so fun to watch, and this is where you realize how good these players are. He just held off 2 E-Giant pushes with Baby Dragon, with Bomber behind it, just by cycling. But watch out, this is not over yet, and we do know he has a heavy spell in that lightning in his hand still, so he cannot take any damage here.
NATO trying to predict the spears, I think. Lightning does come in. NATO trying to work some more. 393. Mohamed Light can't get to Lightning again.
Wow.
He can't get there again. Sandbox with an unbelievable performance. That has to be the game of the weekend. What a game here in Clash Royale League.
And it's funny, I just said that we saw the best defense I've seen all weekend out of Viper, and then Sandbox comes in and says, you know what, hold on for a second, watch what I can do. That was insane. I could watch that type of match for 12 hours a day. That was beautiful Clash Royale. It was Clash Royale at its maximum understanding, and Sandbox basically put on a class on how to defend with cycle decks.
In both directions, though. That's the thing about this. We're talking about Sandbox right now. The story of this game on the front end was how Mohamed Light kept on creating these significant Elixir advantages after that opening. But the recovery from Sandbox, and I hope the replay booth pulled this one. It should be coming up in a little bit. That beautiful wall breakers kite was an absolute game changer.
There was a little bit of everything from Sandbox defense, and that's what I think makes him so versatile. At some points, it was let me cycle 2 Teslas. Then it was let me get these spear goblins to get extra value. Like you said, the kites were on point. He had to bring out every single trick in the book to actually make it work, and he did not miss one time.
Well, think about it. This is an archetype here, too, that people kind of have thought of as dead since the nerfing of the bomb tower and the nerfing of Knight. Because remember, this used to run bomb tower and Knight as opposed to running Valkyrie and Tesla. And this Tesla version, I mean, working at this level in this matchup in this way, very, very impressive gameplay from Sandbox.
I'm so impressed. I'm speechless at Sandbox's gameplay, and it's what we said. This could be a finals match, and it really could be. When you look at that clash, I don't even know what to expect for the rest of the day now. They have set the bar so high. Viper did it last time with the Hog. Now we see this out of Sandbox. What more can we expect? And if it's something like this, we're in for a treat.
Yeah, I mean, that was absolutely wild. The way he was getting back around getting back around to the Teslas and varying that cycle as well, right? Where there were times when Mohamed Light was like, okay, I think I know what's coming next. And the big NATO that was on a Valk as opposed to being on the spears or being on a Magic Archer, that was one of those moments where you could see that Sandbox was just one step ahead in a game where he was having to get cards down very, very fast.
And if you realize, he always had a different Tesla placement, so he couldn't just hover a lightning over, and he was very smart about it. He played the Tesla all the way at the bridge. He played it all the way on the left. Does not give any value. Every time the Tesla was all the way on the left, the Magic Archer was all the way on the right. Everything made sense. No lightning values anywhere. No extra NATO values. It was just perfect gameplay.
So we see E-Giant out of Mohamed Light, which I like the call there. I think it's a great call to go with something unpredictable, and it was working for quite a while here. What do you think comes along in game number 2? Two popular options so far paired with E-Giant in your deck set have been either the Royal Hogs Fireball bait deck or that new popular Royal Giant deck. Do you think there's one of those two directions that he goes, or are we going to go into a cycle play?
I want to see cycle out of mode. Go comfort. You're down 0-1. You can't beat anything. And if it wasn't evident enough, Sam just showed you can beat whatever you want if you play cycle decks the right way. And I think that's something that a lot of us have learned over time. Even though they fall out of the meta, the best players can make it work. And Morden is one of those players. So why can Light not do that when he's the best in the world right now with it, in my opinion? Go to your comfort, secure that third game, and then maybe switch it up.
So we're having a short delay here, guys, as we're trying to get Mohamed Light's camera working. I know you want to see the Golden Throne. Yeah. We all want to see it. And the question right now is, can Mohamed Light defend that throne? Where do you think he is mentality right now? Because it felt like he had a pretty good spot in that position. And you can probably count on one hand the number of times in a major matchup where Mo Light found himself legitimately outplayed.
I think Mo is a player that's very calm. Whenever you see him on camera, which we have a lot of times, even when he's down, he seems to just focus on the game. We've seen him come back so many times, not only in CRL, No Till Worlds, his team was a little bit down sometimes in that duo tournament that we saw from Gems. Everything, it seems like he put in bad positions and just cruises on through. So I'm not worried about him at all. What I do want to see out of Sandbox is maybe try and get a better matchup. He's been struggling a lot with the matchups throughout this tournament, and he has made it work. Yes, and we've seen it, like I said, out of Morden. He makes bad matchups work, but it gets to a point where, like, I really want to see good analysis. Show me that you're going to get the upper hand and then play your game.
Speaking of matchups, of course, we are waiting on game number 2 as they're trying to work a technical difficulty out here on Mohamed's site. We do have, of course, a major matchup coming up next. That's not going to be for you and I, unfortunately, Eric. We're going to take a back seat for this one. But while we're waiting here, what are your thoughts or predictions on Ruben versus Samuel Basoto? And while we're getting your thoughts together, guys, if you're watching home right now, of course, you can vote in the chat, #Ruben or #Samuel to put your vote in. But right now, Eric, you're on the hot seat. I know it's hard to pick this one, but how do you see this matchup going down?
It is, but it's not. All right, they're two great friends of mine, but yesterday I said one thing and I stand by it. Never bet against Ruben. It is just, I've been taught that the hard way, and if I could type right now in the chat, I would be #Team Ruben, #Ruben, #everything Ruben. On top of him being such a good player, have you seen what he's done this weekend? It seems like no one's even close to him.
It's been insane. I mean, I believe he also went 11-0 in the Swiss bracket portion as well. So, yeah, you look at what he's done. Yeah, it's so funny. We talked about this yesterday a bit, but the conversation of Ruben is washed because we haven't seen him here. But Ruben, a washed Ruben, here, the washed version of Ruben still comes into this weekend, number 14 on the global ladder, on the global standings for CRL. So certainly at the top of his game. If you're in Samuel Basoto's corner, and you know Sam very well, if you're in Sam's corner, you're helping him work out for this one, what's the game plan going into that matchup?
Against Ruben, you just have to play completely your game. Do not overanalyze. Do not try anything. There's very few players in history of Clash where I'll tell you that. Just simply forget about analysis, because look what Ruben played yesterday. It was 4 decks that completely no one would expect out of him. He even showed up with decks that we've never seen. So why spend so much time focusing on what he might bring when you know that he can play anything? It was the same thing as it was when you were trying to analyze against Canario, right? Off meta decks, really hard to analyze. No point in doing it. Samuel's good enough to win, right? He is one of those players that can beat Ruben. Just focus on yourself. Bring the best decks for you. Don't try to do too much, and that's the way to go, in my opinion.
Of course, that's what's coming up next, but right now we're waiting on game number 2 here in this fantastic matchup. And yes, we finally have it, and there's the throne. You want the golden chair, you got it. Curtains in tow. Sandbox and Mohamed Light game number 2, and it looks like Mo, it's going to be his turn to go with something fast.
And every time you see those spear goblins and there's a mother witch, you get it placed on the bridge. We saw it over and over again, and I think Josh talked about it. It's beautiful to see if you're the mother witch player, because all you see there is value, value, value.
And this is we saw this yesterday. I mean, it's not going to turn into as bad a result as we saw happen with the same situation yesterday, but trying to defend at the bridge with E-Barbs and immediate Mega Knight in response.
Yeah, this isn't looking great at the start for Mo. He's definitely on the back foot here. Has to spend a lot on defense, not only the first time around, but this time around. Mortar alone would not have been enough, and he might actually even get a Hoggy hit, and he does, even with all that defense coming down.
Bar barrel on the right-hand side. Sandbox so far pitching a shutout here in the first minute. No damage on either tower. Mohamed Light down to 1851, and certainly not liking the situation thus far.
And what I've
as
seen,
he does throw a miner.
Yeah, what I've seen more of today than I have in the last month and a half with this meta, in my opinion, is poison. We have been so used to seeing fireball in every deck. I don't know what these players have been expecting from each other, but today we've seen a lot of poison decks, and maybe there's something brewing up that we don't know about yet, that they're all ready for.
Yeah, it is curious because Graveyard has certainly fallen out of favor in the current meta from being pretty much everywhere, and not even with the significant change to Graveyard, just with the cards that were propping up the popular Graveyard decks. So not seeing as much poison here. And look at this, going Piggy's left-hand lane and defending the right-hand lane. Nice exchange here for Sandbox.
And he doesn't mind that at all. Anytime he can bring out those elite barbarians, he knows he has Mega Knight in hand. He has those zappies, and a little bit late on the timing. That is a very uncharacteristic mistake out of Sandbox, and it might cost him a lot of damage here.
Does Mo... No, he does not. I was going to say, does Mo stop that Zappy from connecting and make sure that mortar stays on tower, but decides to go ahead and set up more defensively here. Mega Knight in, E-Barb's in, Mother Witch behind.
Yeah, and that Muskie is just in range of the splash for the Mega Knight, and the Zappy doing work. The one that he did not want to take care of actually helped him a lot in that defense, but look at the damage that Mo was able to get on that push.
1137 to 1240 if you look crosswise. Mortar down one more time. Pig split 2-2 with the Zappies behind on the right-hand side. E-Barb's in defense on the left-hand lane, but that will even this thing up, take the lead back here for Sandbox as we go into sudden death overtime. The rookie here putting the pressure right now on Mohamed Light, who is facing elimination.
What Mo is doing right now is making sure he doesn't take too much damage. He knows if this gets very late into the game, he can cycle those miners. He does have Fireball. This is not one of those miner mortar decks that doesn't have a big spell. So he's not too worried as long as he can keep his towers up. And he's playing this the way he should be and what we expect out of someone that is that smart with cycle decks.
Mother Witch on the mortar. That's a great target there that Mohamed would prefer as opposed to a troop. Does not turn a piggy out there. You can't turn a building into an animal, unfortunately, for Sandbox in that one. Miner goes to the back, and that's a Mega Knight pushing the right-hand lane.
And that is a full miner connection, and he just can't do anything about it. That's what it came down to. He knew all he had to do was hold off for a little bit longer, and now just one more miner chip the way that it's been going. He might even fireball along with it if he wants to take a little bit more of a risk. If not, he should just hold on to that fireball. We know it'll go on to the Hoggies every time, and he should end up winning this game.
When he can't defend with like a Zappy surround because it'll turn right into fireball bait, and even this will turn into a fireball problem. So on the left-hand side is the only chance really now for Sandbox to go ahead and steal this win. But with 149 and a quick cycling from Mohamed Light, as long as there's no mistakes right now, and that should be enough, Fireball will come in and end the game, and we are all tied up at 1-1.
And that's why you want to go to comfort for Mo. Play those miner decks. He's just too good with them. And even then, it is a good matchup, in my opinion, for him. It is tough for Sandbox to actually get through once Mo gets into the cycle he wanted. He struggled a little bit early on, but it was all about adjusting. Once he adjusted, you saw him take full control of the match. And now it's going to be difficult because he has no E-Giant available, but he also doesn't have his miner, which is his main go-to.
So taking a look at some of the action here, and a little slight lead early on as that exchange at the bridge didn't go exceptionally well for Mohamed Light, but able to just lock down the defense, and really great use of both the mortar and the ice golem, not to mention, of course, the elite barbarians, to protect that musketeer. And she was on the board for a long time, and you see right here the number of times that poison was forced out on the tower that maybe Sandbox didn't want to be playing.
Yeah, and that is all because of Mo Light. It wasn't errors on Sandbox. It is Mo Light forcing that out of Sandbox. It is what the best cycle players do, along with getting extra value out of the cheap cards. We saw a lot of value in the ice golems, the kites, the tanking for the Mega Knight. He was so smart about it, and that's what makes Mo the best, or one of the best cycle players in the game.
So as we go into our third game, from Mohamed Light, we saw Electro Giant in game number 1, Mortar Miner in game number 2. On the other side, we saw the Miner Wall Breakers and then the Royal Hogs from Sandbox. Any thoughts on what we might see here in game number 3?
I would like to see Mo come out with something like a Hog EQ. I think he's the type of player that can make it work. A quick cycle one with those archers. Muskie's not available anymore. We know that there's 2 variations. And on the other side, if you're Sandbox, maybe try something out of your comfort zone. The matchups just haven't been there over and over again. And I think it's the reason he not only finds himself in the lower bracket, but in this position. And it might be time to explore something completely different, something that no one expects out of you.
Well, we'll see what Sandbox can do. Of course, talking about unexpected or expected, there was that last month, got himself pretty close to the same position, falling in that final. You mentioned bad matchups, just a pile of rough matchups in that grand final last month against Ta. So Sandbox, good play in game number 1, but not the greatest matchup. A matchup challenge here in game number 2. So the question now is, can Sandbox and Tribe pool their significant resources here and find a way to get the proper matchup? On the Mohamed Light side, obviously it's known that he works with a fairly talented analyst in Julesy. When you're trying to get a player prepared in a moment like this, Eric, what goes into these game 3 decisions?
I think Julesy's a great person to have because he's been around for so long and he understands the mind of a pro, right? It's a lot different when you have someone that's just been dedicated to analysis his whole career. Julesy has been someone that has played, he's been around everyone. So that's why I think he gets a lot of the upper hand, because he knows the pro player mentality, what they like to go to. And I think that's a big advantage for him. And like you said, it's time for Tribe to pull all those resources and get Sandbox in a good position. And when I said something outside the box, I'm not sure I meant Fire Spirits, but I'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, what?
Yeah, not.
I feel like the last time I saw Fire Spirits in CRL was when it was in Season 1 in 2018 for North America, when Royal played a Golem Fire Spirits deck against Royal Hogs, went Golem in single, and then Fire Spirits the Royal Hogs in the opposite lane. And I think I remember it so well because I believe that's the only other time I've seen Fire Spirits here.
You remember it well, I remember it better. I was the team that was playing the deck that got countered. So trust me, if you remember it, I remember it. He kept fires. It was a Musketeer Hoggies deck and he had Fire Spirits Fireball and it was just terrible. It was such a bad experience.
So here we go. We're a minute and a half in and Fire Spirits are in CRL. I mean, we've seen everything. I'm trying to think of, is there a card that has never been played in Clash Royale League? Mirror has been played, obviously, going back to some gameplay from 2018 by the mad scientist himself, OP Sam. I'm trying to think of if there's an actual card that has never made an appearance at this point.
I think it's everything has been played, and thank you Sandbox for making that dream come true for all the Fire Spirit players in that 4,000 trophy range that, you know, they still have that creativity flowing. And I don't mind it, but we have to see if it works, because creativity is not always the way to go. Thinking outside the box and something that other people don't expect is one thing, but using cards like this could be very risky.
Very risky indeed, and trying to hold off against this Ram right on the left-hand side. Is this a Royal Giant deck? What's he going for here?
It should be. Whenever you see Hunter with that Fisherman and the Mega Minion, it tends to be a Royal Giant deck, but I can't tell you exactly what it is, just because with that Fire Spirit, with that Bomber, it's so hard to tell, and that is an RG that is going to be disappeared very quickly.
Disappeared very, very quickly. Can the defense hold on here? Fire Spirits with Zap doing a good job here at the top, but the Elixir advantage still holding true right now for Mohamed Light, who goes in with the Ram Rider.
Wow.
Like a Ram Rider, and look at that bar barrel just clearing the way there for the Ram Rider.
That was so smart out of him. Not only did it take away the Bomber, but it predicted the Fisherman, and that was definitely flowing through his head. It wasn't a coincidence. He knew that there was a Fisherman that was going to come down. It's his only real defense once that Hunter is off the board, and just a very, very smart play out of Mo that we've said that I don't know how many times already.
Yeah, we should definitely get that bar barrel in the replays after this game here. Over to the booth as we go into sudden death overtime. 15 seconds ticked away so far. And we've been talking a lot about the pressure of Mohamed Light, but currently the lead still going for Sandbox.
Yeah, and it's all going to be about, can he continue to hold on? It feels like he has a nice grasp of the game right now. That one Hoggy's actually going to get on the board and get a couple hits for him that swings it in his favor. He's been getting a lot of nice zaps. I will give that to him to make sure his fisherman stays alive, but just too much pressure right now.
Oh, the pressure is great. Look at that. Mohamed Light can smell blood in the water. Sandbox knows it's over. GG, well played. Comes from behind. Does Mohamed Light. The throne still defended for the moment. At least one more match. He's moving on.
He's so good. He's so good. And again, I feel for Sandbox. The deck choices are just not there right now. And this is something that is so important in this duels format. You need to be just as good with your deck choices as you are playing the game, because he played so well. It's just so hard to play against Mo and be at a disadvantage.
Yeah, it's absolutely brutal, and it seems like an eon ago, but it was just 2 games ago or 3 games ago when we saw Sandbox put on what is probably going to be the best game of the weekend in that opening one with the great Pekka play. But you know, in the end here, Mohamed Light just too much, regrouped, did a great job, and you know, Tribe Gaming needs to go back to the well and figure out how to outmatch up some of these plays, because you have the skill set for Sandbox, but the deck selection so far has been lacking.
Yeah, and I love the great sportsmanship out of Sandbox, you know, like recognizing, like, you beat me, man. Gives them the 2 thumbs up. Not much I can do. Congratulations to you. And Sandbox still has to be happy, right? This is a lot of points overall. And people like Sandbox, like Mohamed, like Ruben, Samuel, they do want to win these monthly finals, but for them, it's all about that world finals. And these points are crucial for that.
And it wasn't the Pekka, it was the minor wall breakers, the update to the very popular deck from the previous meta, and this was just an absolute masterclass, really on both sides. But what Sandbox did here on defense was next level.
It was the best defensive plays I've seen all weekend long, and it topped Vipers from just 5 minutes before then. And I could rewatch this. I'm sure you're gonna rewatch it. You'll do a video. I love your videos recapping these type of decks and really pointing out, because when we watch it live, it's hard to really capture all the great moments. You see the best, but there's so many little interactions that make the rest of the game work for Sandbox, and that is what really makes these cycle decks so impressive. All
right, you've convinced me. Inside the Play is going to come back for one episode. And then we go into game number 2, and this feels like a miscalculation on Tribe's side. You called it. You're not, I mean, yes, you're a world champion coach, not to take it away from you, but you're in the commentary booth now, and you called that Mohamed Light would be going towards Comfort, Mortar Minor. That's what he's known for playing, and it feels like Tribe Gaming and Sandbox just got the wrong call here.
You know that he's going to play it at some point, right? And if he leaves it for deck number 3, it would be too obvious, in my opinion. He would basically be saying, okay, deck number 3, I still have minor available, I'm going for it. And that's why I assumed Mo would play that in the second deck. And yes, it is a little bit of understanding of this duels format that maybe Tribe is still figuring out. It is just month number 4, and hopefully later on we see better adaptation to that.
Well, talking about adaptation, this was certainly an attempt at one. I mean, the Fire Spirits, this feels like lots of different decks just got thrown into a box together. Sandbox shook them up, and this is what came out.
I'm not sure what you're looking for. That's my biggest issue. What exactly are you looking for with those Fire Spirits, especially knowing that, you know, Mother Witch is still on the board, so if you toss those on the bridge, that's 3 Hoggies coming out. It just doesn't make a lot of sense for me. I expected a Hog Rider out of Mo. He gives us a little bit of the same style with the Ram Rider, but those Fire Spirits don't really help against either of them. Just a bit odd for me, and Mo obviously played perfect.
Yeah, Mo played perfect is a great way to describe it, and that perfection, of course, will lead him to the next stage in our tournament. Let's take a look at the bracket here as we see Mohamed Light will send Sandbox home. Great performance there by the young rookie, but Mohamed Light does come out on top. So look at this top 4 here. At the lower bracket final, Viper and Mohamed Light, a tough out either direction, but we could end up with a top 3 of Mohamed Light, Ruben, and Samuel Basoto, which really you might be saying, well, that's the 3 best players on the planet right now.
Can we watch this bracket again next weekend? Can we do this all over again, please? This bracket was so stacked since the beginning, and it's given us everything we hope for. Now, like I said, that Viper Mo Light match is going to be so much fun. Whenever 2 of those very, very good friends go up against each other, and they are very clear in their comfort decks. You know Mo loves those miners that cycle play, and you know Viper loves that hog play. What will they do? Maybe get inside each other's head, trick each other. It's so much fun to watch. And before that, we have the matchup.
The matchup coming up next. Last chance to get your votes in. Go ahead, hashtag Ruben, hashtag Samuel to vote for who you think will be the winner. And to talk you through all that one, Eric and I are going to say goodbye and toss that over to our good friends, Andrew Guy and Joshua AC Sharon.
Hey, what's up, everybody? What an incredible start to the day. Josh, talk to me just a little bit before we get into our match, which everyone's very excited about, hashtag Ruben or hashtag Samuel. Talk to me just a little bit about Momo against Sandbox.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the level of skill shown, phenomenal. The game's phenomenal. Everything was great. I really think everything comes down to game number 3. What decks are you going to use? And Sandbox chose that one. I mean, it's exactly what they were saying. I don't understand the reasoning behind why he did that. But if it would have worked out, you know, we'd be calling him a genius. So unfortunately, it doesn't work out for him. And look, the top 4 is Viper, Muhammad Light, Ruben, and Samuel Basoto. It's unbelievable.
It's nuts. And speaking of Samuel Basoto and Ruben, we do have our community predictions coming in just a moment. Josh, I'm going to leave you in the hot seat. Who do you got? Hashtag Samuel or hashtag Ruben?
Okay, so I know that Samuel is going to come to my stream today and he's going to say, what are you thinking? Like, you can't do this to me. And I have no problem telling him to his face that I don't care. I love Ruben's gameplay right now. I think he's the best player in the world right now. And I'm going to say hashtag Ruben 100%.
You know what? I'm in the exact same boat with you. As Rich was talking about a moment ago, he didn't lose at qualifiers. He's barely lost here this competition at finals. You and I are both going with the former world champion. Let's see what the audience said. I was in the YouTube chat for a little while Rich and Eric were casting, especially during one of those calls to action. And I got to tell you, I saw a flood of hashtag Rubens come in, but I did see a bunch of Samuels on the back end. So let's see what we have here. And look at that, Josh, 69% to Ruben, 31 to Samuel. Looks like there's going to be a lot of people that are in the same boat as you and myself.
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, Eric as a coach, he's had to play against Ruben. Me as a player, I've had to play against Ruben. I've only gone against him one time in the 1v1s. And let me tell you, I think I was in the game for about 20 seconds. And then after that, he controlled everything to such a crazy amount that I didn't really want to keep playing. So it's just so hard to bet against that man.
And that's really one of the most interesting and fascinating things about watching Ruben play is he's such a calculated player. He'll sit back for sometimes 30 seconds and take control of the game, or sometimes 4 minutes and then take control of the game. He somehow always seems to find a way. So Ruben going very much in the meta right now with Mortar Valkyrie here. Valkyrie being a lot more popular in the later weeks of this meta just because of how good those E-barbs are and how that Valkyrie can counter for a good positive trade. Top of your screen, we're seeing another very popular deck, Josh, in this dual lane Royal Hogs, Flying Machine, Zappy's deck.
Yeah, I really like that hog right there. Gonna be able to get really aggressive, get a lot of damage. He does take a little bit of damage, but chooses to do so, wants to, you know, try and get himself really back into the game, and I like what he did there. But yeah, Valk, Mortar, Hog, we don't see all that often. It's kind of, you know, a mix of everything. And then Basoto, obviously gonna be using, probably it's gonna be MK and Poison, or MK and Fireball, and there we go, we do see the Fireball. But that's 2 Elixir. I was thinking that Mother Witch was a little too aggressive, and right there we see it. He has no Elixir.
That's exactly what I was thinking as well. It felt like the Mother Witch coming down in response to the Mortar is never really the response you want. She doesn't do a lot of damage. She doesn't have a lot of health, so easy to take her off the board, and that's exactly what Ruben does. He doubles down, and then he gets that Hog Rider in after the Fireball comes in on top of that Musketeer. So really, really nice. Kind of exactly what we were just talking about. Ruben sets you up to make mistakes, and he takes advantage of the game already.
Yeah, I mean, 1 minute and 4 seconds left, having to cycle the MK in the back. Look, it's not over. You have Mother Witch, you have E-barbs, but here's the thing. You've used Mother Witch, you've used E-barbs. If you're going to use that game number 1, you have to set yourself up for success in games number 2 and game number 3, and the way to set yourself up for success, winning the game. This is tough for him to use both of those cards, and it looks like he's not going to be able to come back at this point.
Yeah, I mean, just perfect defense there from Ruben. He should have enough here for another mortar to come down. There it is. Spear Goblin's going to come down in assistance as well. Spear Goblins plus Skeletons. All those cards so great to not only get a little bit of DPS in, or a lot of DPS when you talk about single target, but of course also to distract those elite barbarians, as you were just highlighting a second ago, Josh. If Samuel doesn't win this game, he's lost 2 of the best cards currently in the meta. And right now he's actually getting a very good push in, but is 8 seconds enough time?
Everything needs to be played at the bridge, and that's obviously exactly what's going to be happening, but just not in time. He does that push maybe 15 seconds earlier, and, you know, it's a different ball game. But, yeah, I mean, we know Ruben isn't worried about that because he has everything under control. Not going to be a problem for him.
So that was a really aggressive and kind of unorthodox defense on that mortar early on, and it looked like it was just because Samuel was in a very, very bad cycle and elixir position. You talk about 4 elixir being spent defensively, but, you know, it could have been Zappies, could have been Flying Machine, but instead it's the Mother Witch up high and on top of that mortar. It felt like from that moment on, the game was basically Ruben's to lose.
Yeah, I mean, it's just too much elixir to spend, especially when you have that musketeer coming down the same lane. It's just going to be way too easy for him to get a lot of value, forces out the fireball. You've got 1 elixir and your opponent has a hog rider coming down the lane. It is near impossible to come back at that point. Obviously, he did his best. He put himself in a position to possibly win, but Ruben's just too talented on defense, so it's obviously not going to happen.
Yeah, Ruben leaves the door open just a bit here in the final moments. As you see, he defends that last Hog Rider push, or that Royal Hogs push, excuse me, with Spear Goblins and Skeletons. Those all turned into Hogs that were from a Mother Witch behind a Mega Knight. So that's exactly what Basoto was going for. He just wasn't able to put it together with enough time left in the game. Honestly, if he had one more sequence on offense, I think he maybe would have been able to take that tower down, but Ruben obviously not going to allow that to happen. He goes Comfort in game 1, or at least a very comfortable deck in the meta, Josh. Yesterday we saw Ruben kind of looking ahead in the meta as well with his E-Giant Prince deck. Do you think we see that from him again, as he was so dominant with it?
It's tough. Look, when you look at Ruben, he is willing to do anything. So to be able to go on broadcast and predict exactly what he's going to do, obviously not going to happen. I want to say there's the possibility that it could happen, but as we already see the Zappies, he's probably not going to lean towards E-Giant.
Yeah, most likely exactly going to be these Rascals, Royal Hogs, Flying Machine. So we'll see how Samuel wants to deal with that. Looking like Bait already. Bait has been a little bit more popular in this meta just because Log has not been as popular. Been other smaller spells coupled with Fireball.
Yeah, and I really like the Bait choice from Basoto. He just wants to put himself in a position where he feels comfortable with his deck, and that's exactly what you're going to be so comfortable when you're Samuel Basoto using these kind of cycle decks. And yeah, I really love that deck choice from him.
Yeah, so Samuel, top of your screen here, Ruben at the bottom. Ruben up 1 game here, as he's just going to kind of sit back here in single elixir, try to not take too much damage, try to not get in a bad spot elixir wise, and then once we get into double, I imagine we'll see a little bit more aggression from Ruben.
Yeah, so he only has Barbell and Fireball. Obviously, Samuel Basoto, how does he win this game? By protecting his princesses. The Dark Goblins are also very important, but the princess is the key to win this game. He doesn't have a building, so he doesn't have to worry about wasted elixir when the recruits come down the field, when the Royal Hogs come down the field, which is very good. The Bait deck always loses if it's Inferno Tower. Even Tesla really, really struggles against it. But with no... Oh, no, he does have a building, excuse me. It's just dependent on how he wants... If he has Inferno Tower, he's going to struggle and probably lose. If he has another one, because of how quick his cycle is, he's not out of the game just yet.
So you see there a nice pickup on that princess at the bridge there with the Goblin Cage. You get a well played out there from Samuel as we take in double elixir. And as we do, that's when those Royal Recruits come down. Zappy's also in the middle here. And it's going to be a lot of layered defense from Ruben moving forward. He's going to want to make sure to hold on to that Bar Barrel to deal with the Goblin Barrel. That's going to be his #1 priority for that. He's going to have to get creative in taking out the Skeleton Barrel and taking out that Dark Goblin.
Yeah, and unfortunately, he is using Inferno Tower, so this is going to be very difficult for him. Once triple elixir hits, that's when it gets incredibly difficult. You have to be spacing out your princess so that way you can't get fireball value on top of the Inferno Tower and princess. You have to be spacing out your Dark Goblins. You have to be applying pressure. There's so many different levels to how you have to play it on the Bait side, but if there's a person who can do it, it's obviously going to be Basoto. What Basoto needs to be doing, kind of just keeping in a similar HP advantage, disadvantage kind of way. And then once triple Elixir hits, that's when he just starts cycling everything, trying to not allow him to keep up, trying to force out the fireball on defense instead of offense. And then that's when you can start cycling Dark Goblins. And that's when it gets really weird for Ruben.
Yeah, and it does really feel like for Ruben in this moment, Josh, that he is totally happy just sitting back and defending and trying to get to that triple Elixir that you were talking about, so that he can really put the hurting on with a dual lane pressure, and so that Samuel cannot utilize that Inferno Tower and his cycle to his utmost.
With 1 minute and 35 seconds, I feel like both players are playing this perfectly so far, and that's gonna happen, right? That's gonna happen. Both players are playing, you know, somewhat comfort level decks. And then with 1 minute and 20, this is where, you know, he really starts to turn up the pressure. Finally doesn't have Barbara on cycle, doesn't force out the defensive fireball, but he does put himself in the lead finally. With 1 minute and 10 seconds left, he finally has that lead.
Fireball going to give Ruben that lead back. Log going to steal it back for Samuel Basoto. As we get into the last minute of action here, Flying Machine going to come down to meet that Skeleton Barrel. Bar Barrel should be back in cycle to deal with the Goblins, and it is. Dark Goblin getting some good value in. Skeletons in to protect. Flying Machine behind, but a Knight comes down as well, so we get some Royal recruits at the bridge. This is a cycle war. Right now, Ruben is trying to deal with all of this bait. He actually gets it all off the board without having to use that Bar Barrel. Now's the time to attack.
Yeah, Tower not locking on into the Flying Machine, which is what he was hoping for with 2 Elixir, just using the log on defense. This is where it just gets so painful for him because he just can't keep up. 10:57, 9:09, 7:6. I mean, it is over.
That is it. Ruben and the Flying Machines doing exactly what we said. Look, we talked about how Ruben can do it in 30 seconds at the top of a game, or he can do it in the last minute of a 5-minute game, and he did just that. He held on confidently for 4 minutes, waiting for triple Elixir, holding on to that Bar Barrel. He missed 1 Goblin Barrel throughout the entire time. The rest of it was all defended so brilliantly, and you saw the very last bridge battle there between him and Samuel, and it was who was going to blink first. And unfortunately for Basoto, the Brazilian, it was him in that moment.
Yeah, I mean, just so smart. He was cycling Zappy's high, so that way the Skeleton Barrels weren't able to get onto the tower and get damaged. He was getting a lot, like, Basoto was getting a ton of log value, and he was doing a great job of doing that. But once it hits triple Elixir, it's so hard to overwhelm when you're the bait player, and it's so easy when you're the recruits player to just cycle recruits, cycle Zappies, and then you have everything going down the lane. He's forced to go with offensive logs instead of defensive logs, and so that's when you really start overwhelming, and it's impossible to come back.
Yeah, overwhelm is really the key, you know, to victory there when you're talking about these log bait decks, which is why it was so fascinating to watch Ruben for the entirety of this game. Just sit back. You know, you said early on that Samuel was going to want to stay close when you talk about tower damage, and then as it got into double and triple Elixir, he needed to start overwhelming before Ruben got deep into triple and was really able to take advantage of that cycle, and mainly the Inferno Tower. You know, he recognized that matchup very early on. I never saw him get aggressive until the very last moment when he actually took that game. So great recognition early on from Ruben in game number 2. Let's talk about these matchups in game 1.
Yeah, I mean, using Valcog Mortar, I love that idea. Using the Earthquake as well, tons of spells available to you. You can use E-Barbs, you can use Mother Witch in the next games, and you get a good matchup when you play well. Really good awareness on his end when he knew his opponent was at 4 Elixir or 2 Elixir or 5 Elixir. He doesn't have enough for the E-Barbs. He doesn't have enough for the MK. So let me throw down the Hog. Let me put him in suboptimal positions where he has to defend in improper ways. And it was just so easy for him to just kind of stay even. And then boom, you waste the Mother Witch on top of the Mortar. Musketeer takes it out, so you have to Fireball on top of that. And then you've got a free Hog on the tower.
We've seen Mortar, E-Giant, you know, E-Giant, Hog Rider, now Royal Giant, Graveyard. All of these win conditions have come out from Ruben just over the last 24 hours. We can go on to deck number 2 as we're talking about this, but I think that's one of the scariest things in the game, and there are the Royal Hogs. Talk about Ruben just being able to play every single win condition, and has just played like 6 different win conditions so far in CRL this weekend. He's lost 1 game, and it makes him so hard to strategize against.
Well, and I mean, okay, so I've played that Royal Hogs Recruits deck probably 300 times, 500 times. I don't know. It feels like I promise you, I've played it quite a bit, and it has taken me a long time to be able to figure out some of the matchups with it. Yes, it's not the most difficult deck to use, but you know, against RG, you have to kind of save your Goblin. You can place it on top of the RG. For bait, you have to wait till triple, you know, deep into triple if they have Inferno Tower, and then that's when you overwhelm. For Ruben, it didn't feel that way. I don't know if he's played that deck for the first time ever or he's played that deck 1,000 times, but he was so consistent with everything. It was so clear that he knew, okay, you're trying to cycle Skeleton Barrel, let me put the Zappies high, and then let me get back to my Bar Barrel by cycling the E-Spirit high, so that way it protects the Zappies. I mean, everything he was doing was so perfect that if I was playing the game and I was able to pause the game every 5 seconds so that way I could prepare, that's what I would have done, but he's doing this with no problem.
Yeah, on the fly, in the moment, and of course, in the biggest competition in the world. Let's take a look at our updated bracket. After Ruben continues to move through that winner's bracket, he will be one of our finalists today. He's still got 2 lives to give, which means that one of these 3 remaining players, Viper, Molite, or Basoto, have to beat Ruben in back-to-back sets. So a very, very tough hill to climb there. But first, we have to go to our 12th match of the day between Viper and our former world champion in February, Mohamed Light, who came back in a very, very brilliant fashion in his last set. You know, down 1 game to Sandbox, who played arguably the best defense I think I've ever seen, especially when you talk about dual Electro Giants coming down the exact same lane with a quick cycle deck. But then Momo did what Momo does. How do you feel about this set, Josh? Talk to me about Viper. Talk to me about Mohamed Light.
Well, I mean, it's exactly like Eric was saying earlier. They are friends. They are homies. They know each other. They love messing around on Twitter and trying to, you know, get the entire community on their side when they're trying to argue against each other. I am so excited for this. Both players are extremely talented. And, I mean, I just... The top 4 of this and the fact that we get to witness these games, it's so beautiful. I don't know what they're going to use. Oh, brilliant.
So we are waiting for just a moment for Mohamed Light. He sounds like he's shining up that golden chair. The golden chair, golden boy. Rich is going to be so mad that I did that when he wasn't on broadcast. So we see Ruben starting off 2-0 there against Samuel Basoto. Now we have Viper against Mohamed Light, and those are our next 2 potential matches. Samuel Basoto against the winner of this match, and of course, Ruben waiting for the winner of our match 12. Mohamed Light and Viper, you're just talking about it, Josh. Good friends in the space, practice partners. They like to talk trash to each other on Twitter. Is this the time where we finally see them run their comfort decks against each other? I feel like the 4 of us have been waiting for Viper to run Hog Exinado more than anyone else in the world. The 4 of us have been dying for it.
Yeah, honestly, I don't care if Mohamed Light runs comfort. Like, at this point, you know, I've seen him. We've seen him month in, month out. Look, the dude's talented. We all get it. You know, arguably best player in the world. Like, we have no problem saying that. But Viper, that's the one I want to watch. I want to see him run that Valk. I want to see him run that Xe. I want to see him cycle those rockets. It is the most beautiful thing in the world to witness. The best one trick in the world is Viper, and I want to see him use that deck.
I do too. I mean, look, if he's the best one trick in the world and he's gotten as far as he has here in CRL, he's accomplished as much as he has on ladder, and he does it with that same deck, no matter what the meta is, no matter how far out of the meta those cards are. I want to see him run it here in this set, and against his buddy, it feels like a good time to do it. But with this much money on the line, this is a $6,000 match that we're about to see between 2 friends. And, you know, Mohamed Light already got 22K sitting in the bank from February. It feels like Viper might want to add to his stack of cash.
Yeah, no doubt. You know, I mean, I'm sure Mohamed Light wants to as well. But, I mean, if you're Viper and, you know, you guys are friends, you might, you know, hey, you know, go easy on me. Don't use the miner, please. And then everything should be available to him, in my opinion.
So while we're waiting on this last moment of these 2 guys getting their decks together, production has asked us to do another set of predictions. Last time I put you in the hot seat, so this time I'm going to go first. And I'll be honest, when I saw the opening of Sandbox Mohamed Light, I was like, all right, this is it. Mohamed Light's going to be done here. Sandbox is going to move forward. But after I saw Momo sticking through it, doing exactly what Eric talked about, which is he dropped that game early on. He stayed very mentally strong. You know, he was a little irritated on camera, but he wasn't defeated. The way that he bounced back, I imagine he's riding very, very high right now, and he feels like he's got a shot at those finalists. I'm going Mohamed Light in this game.
Okay, I'm glad you said that because I am going Viper. I think he hasn't used his one-trick deck whatsoever. Obviously, you know, both players are going to be confident, but Viper, I mean, he is so talented. He hasn't used anything, you know, that we've been expecting. So clearly, like, he is willing to use whatever deck he feels like is going to give him the advantage. And I feel like that is going to play a huge role in this because I feel like he's going to think, oh, my one trick is going to give me the advantage in this because I think his one trick kind of matches up well against Mohamed Light. And so I think we're going to see it, and I think he's going to win with it.
And we've seen Viper play a lot of variations of Hog Rider, but not the exact deck that he's become famous for. You know, that set that he had against Hire earlier today was a very, very quick 2-up, 2-down against a very formidable opponent in Hire.
Yeah, I mean, he is just ready for this. And look, we can even look back. Okay, so who has he lost to, right? He lost to Ruben. Can you even fault the man? In my opinion, he's still in the winner's bracket. So I think I feel good about that, saying because he lost round 1, everything, you know, kind of against him, and then it's just boom, 2-0, 2-0, 2-0. Like he is ready for this, and I feel good about him.
That's a really important point that you make is, yes, he did lose to Ruben. He got 2-0'd by Ruben, as it feels like most people have been 2-0'd by Ruben in the last week, or I guess the last month. But when you talk about what else he's done in the rest of the brackets, yes, he has gone through sweeps. He swept Hire, he swept Eunice. So this is clearly a very, very talented guy. Mohamed Light's been a little bit more up and down today. You might be able to say his opponents have been of a little bit higher caliber or maybe a little bit more experience, but still, he has struggled a bit more than Viper this weekend at CRL.
Yeah, and I mean, look, yes, it's slightly more formidable, but here's the thing. All of these guys, you know, some of the best players in the world, and for him to be able to consistently, and if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if he used it first or he used it second, but he used this P.E.K.K.A deck going against Eunice, and it was like on the fly why he chose to use that deck because he thought it would be a good matchup. I mean, again, that comes down to he's willing to use whatever deck he feels confident with, and that's why I feel so confident with saying Viper, because he's just willing to use whatever, and he's playing at such a high caliber.
So getting a little bit of insight into what's going on right now in this moment, a little bit of behind the scenes, is it sounds like players are submitting their decks, but they're having some issues with duplicate cards being in the decks, which I want to ask you, Josh, does this mean that they might not be prepared with the decks that they're running if they're having issues with duplicating cards? Are they trying to make on the adjustment flies? Would this ever happen to you in a duels format?
Look, I have talked about it, I think one time or something, maybe 3 months ago. But the reason why I have so much respect for Air Surfer as a pro is because I've been on call with him when he was trying to get my help for, you know, some dual format games. And he starts sharing his screen. So I'm watching him. We're both on Discord. And then he goes over to this private server that he created for himself. And he has, okay, graveyard decks when this is banned. Graveyard decks when you've used these 2 cards. Graveyard decks when, you know, everything is free. If you are a pro in this situation, you need to be prepared for absolutely anything. And so you have to be ready for everything. For me, this wouldn't happen because with the dedication that I want to use for this game, I want to be prepared for any situation, and I want to be ready when my number is called and, you know, I don't have an analyst or anything like that. I want to be able to use any deck that I think is going to give me that advantage, and players like Air Surfer, they are ready for that.
Talking about the decks, this is our format. It is a duels format. Each player bringing 4 decks consisting of 32 unique cards. Each deck can only be played 1 time, and they must win 2 games of 3. These are best of 3s, and we talk about what's up for grabs. We said a moment ago, but there is still $30,000 up for grabs in our final match, and an additional $10,000 up for grabs in these next couple matches. So we talk about a lot of money on the line, adding pressure to it. A lot of these guys have a ton of experience. Viper is kind of the is the green one out here, the young one out. When you talk about experience, when the other people up here in Ruben, Samuel Basoto, and now Mohamed Light have a ton of experience at the highest level.
Yeah, and obviously that's the one knock you can have on the guy. Like, yes, he's talented. Yes, he's clearly shown that he's, you know, willing to step into the spotlight and perform. But at the end of the day, experience can trump everything. You can get nervous. You can misclick. I've had situations where there's 20 seconds left in a 12th win GC, and I don't even tap the screen because my hands are shaking. Like, it can happen. And so while I have so much respect for him as a player, and I think he's, you know, a top 3 player in the game right now, that is very important.
So today, I think we've probably seen more Hog Rider in CRL than I think we have all year long. And, you know, Rich probably has these numbers on standby, but I do believe it feels like we've seen Hog Rider more today than we have yet in the competition. What do you think it is? You know, we talked about Graveyard coming out of the meta. Biggest reason for that is obviously Mother Witch, which then in turn made it so Poison fell out, but we're starting to see more Poison. We saw a little bit of Graveyard yesterday, but we've been seeing a ton of Hog Rider, and in general, we've seen a lot of 2.6 in Top Ladder and in Grand Challenges since this last balance change. Is there something about the fast cycle matching up in the meta right now because it's a little bit of a heavier meta? Why is Hog Rider showing up more and more as of late?
Yeah, I really think it's a combination of basically everything. It just matches up well, and then the main thing I want to say is that it really matches up well against E-Giant. And so when E-Giant is always available because it doesn't utilize cards that are going to be used in multiple decks, you can use E-Giant no matter what other decks you're using. And so that's why Hog Rider has such good matchups overall, because there's always the potential you can get, you know, not a free win, but, you know, if you're using Tesla and you pull correctly and you defend properly, you can sometimes get free wins in those kind of instances.
So top of your screen, Mohamed Light going with very much in the meta right now, Mega Knight plus that Mother Witch. And then bottom of your screen, we see Viper coming out with Hog Earthquake once again. I just want to say Hog Exinado because I want it so badly.
I want it so badly. That's all I want. That's all we ask, and unfortunately, that's just not what we get.
Yeah, we're not going to get it. We did see a little bit of a smile on both of these guys' faces when this game started, as you talked out and pointed out and highlighted, Josh. These are good friends, and I imagine, you know, and you could probably speak on this first-handedly, when you're playing against your good friends, even when it's a competition, it does make it just a little bit more fun.
Yeah, just the spice added to it. It's so brilliant that there's I'm just smiling thinking about when I've played Diego B and when I've played Trainer Chris and when I've played Air Surfer. It is so enjoyable to play against those kind of players because you want to win so badly. You want to hold it over their head whenever you join a call with them or when you're tweeting online, and you just want to be able to say, oh, really? You know, man, there's just so many different things. You beat me in a GC? Well, guess who won $6,000? And you still won $4,000. Don't get me wrong, it's still impressive.
But just not as much as 6, you know.
Just not as much as 6.
So we see a nice defense there coming down from Viper early on. We saw an aggressive Mother Witch out from Mohamed Light, looking for those skeletons played defensively by Viper, but they were placed in the perfect spot, so no piggies did spawn, and now we see that attempt once again, this time getting a little bit more luck. 2 hogs come out as that Mother Witch is again played aggressively at the bridge.
Yeah, very clean defense from Viper. The question is, how does he want to go through the rest of this game? Does he want to try and spell cycle? Does he want to try and go in with hogs? So the way he's using these hogs, when he has E-bars in cycle, he knows that he's not getting any damage. So he's not worried about anything. You know, he can play this at 4. It doesn't really matter to him. He's just trying to set it up so that when he doesn't have the E-bars in cycle, that's when he's going to try and get the EQ. That's when he's going to try and get 500 damage, 700 damage, so then he can spell cycle him out.
Yeah, and it's really important for him to make sure those barbs are out of cycle, because it does feel like that's when Viper would have the most difficulty defending, right? As if Elite Barbarians come in behind a Mega Knight with a Flying Machine behind that. That's when Viper has a lot of difficulty dealing with a single target DPS and, of course, getting to the Flying Machine.
Yeah, exactly. And Mohamed Light, with 2 minutes left, finally kind of applying pressure where it makes Viper's life a little bit harder, but I'm pretty sure Viper is just totally content with trying to spell cycle him out. He's in a good spot. He only has poison on offense, you know, looking at Mohamed Light's deck, And so it makes his defenses a lot cleaner, a lot more simple. He can go in with a royal delivery on top of the fly machine, on top of the Mother Witch, and that's exactly what we see. We're going to get a ton of log value if he chooses to do so. Instead, just defending properly, defending perfectly, and, you know, that's what we expect from Viper.
I mean, that was just a phenomenal defense. You talk about the delivery up high, the skeletons down low. The skeletons distract the Mega Knight and the flying machine for just long enough. Then the delivery comes in with the Valkyrie up high on top of the Royal Hogs and the mortar. Just brilliant, brilliant use of cycle, and just like that, the cycle master gets outcycled in game number 1. A little bit of a smile to his friend, and we see a well played and a good game coming out from these good buddies as Viper goes up 1 game. I mean, you were highlighting his hog play, which was really, really great, and keeping those E-Barbs out of cycle, always making Mohamed Light play a little bit uncomfortable and out of position. But man, those defenses were immaculate.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like he got maximum value every single time he played. I mean, the MVP of the match was Royal Delivery. I mean, you're placing on top of flying machines, so you have a 20% health flying machine at the end, or with your pushes. He's placing on top of the Mother Witch, on top of the Royal Hogs, getting value on top of all 4 of the Royal Hogs. Finally setting himself up for a defense where he can use the Hog to sort of kite the Mega Knight, but where it goes on offense. And it was just too simple for him. He placed those Royal Deliveries so perfectly every time, where he's getting at least 4, at least 5, at least 6 Elixir worth of value with those Royal Deliveries.
The defensive sequencing was just incredible by Viper, and you talk about being able to get good value out of those 1 Elixir cards. That is the best way to make sure your defense is going to be a stronghold when you're making positive trades all the way across the board with things like the delivery, with things like the skeleton, and Viper makes it look very, very easy in game number 1. Now I expect Mohamed Light to probably go a little bit more in his own lane. That last deck was a little heavier than he'd like, but he's run a little bit of heavier decks this weekend, as you just saw, and of course with Electro Giant yesterday. Does he go comfort here against his friend who knows him so well, or does he try to stick in the meta and maybe go a little heavier now that Hog Rider is no longer in play?
I think, man, it is so tough, because this is exactly what I was saying about why Viper is so in such a good spot for this, is because he's willing to use whatever he wants to, and whatever he thinks is going to get a good matchup. I feel like if he goes comfort, I think Viper is going to be able to abuse that. But I also think that Mohamed Light is going to go comfort right now.
I do too. For some reason, I have a feeling that Mohamed Light will, because he is one of those guys, and we've seen a lot of guys like this in CRL who are like, all right, whatever. And, you know, Eric and Rich were talking about it before. You know what I'm going to play. You have a more favorable matchup. I'm going to play right through it, because that's what I am good at, and that's what I want to do. But already, we see this Mega Minion out for Mohamed Light, so a little bit different. Maybe we will see Graveyard. We'll see. Oh, never mind.
And the Lightning as well. I'm trying to figure out what decks in the meta have Mega Minion along with Lightning. We could be seeing Golem coming out from Mohamed Light.
Yeah, maybe a Golem deck. We haven't seen much Golem at all in CRL, and, you know, the other obvious choice would be the Electro Dragon, but usually Mega Minion not in that deck. Electro Giant, excuse me.
Yeah, so Viper using E-Wiz, this is going to be just the heavier version of RG. He doesn't... I like this version quite a bit more than the other version, because you actually stand a chance going against Lava. You actually stand a chance going against Balloon decks. So last card should, in theory, be RG and Fireball, and one other card I'm trying to figure out what it could be, maybe E-Barbs as well. And then going against Golem with Cage as the likely response right here. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting matchup. Great Fireball value right there, and yeah, I'm excited for this game.
Yeah, nice calls there all the way across the board from AC, and we see an offensive push coming across the bridge here. Damage, though, going to be very, very minimal, if any. We talk about nice defense here from Viper, and he takes that Dark Prince off the board and the Mega Minion. Mega Minion protects that Baby Dragon just long enough to get a few belches in. Of course, Bomber puts in a little bit of damage in the opposite lane. Mohamed Light currently in the lead.
Yeah, Viper kind of defended that perfectly and kind of took way too much damage. It was an odd spot for him where it felt like everything survived with 4% health, but it couldn't have been stopped regardless. Okay, and then he is going to go E-Giant. I'm surprised that he's using the Mega Minion version instead of, you know, the Ice Wizard version that we often see. And the reason why we see Ice Wizard is because of matchups like this, where the Ice Wizard plus the NATO is going to provide so much value when you're pushing everything back. and it gets kind of weird in these spots when you don't have it.
Yeah, the Bomber, though, has been really paying dividends for Mohamed Light. The Bomber was actually, I think, the reason why that first sequence went so well. The Bomber got on top of that Mother Witch, took it off the board, and that Barb Barrel was a bit of an overspend by Viper. And now we see this Mega Minion getting 3 swipes on the tower, 3 massive swipes, a great lightning in. Mohamed Light knows that's game already. 20 seconds remain, and we are going to game number 3. The buddies are battling it out. And that was a very, very nice game number 2 from Mohamed Light that all started with, in my opinion, an over-aggressive Barb Barrel to protect a Mother Witch that was all taken off the board by a Bomber. Then you got that Dark Prince up front, and from there on out, it was basically downhill with that second overspend on the Royal Giant.
Yeah, I mean, he was playing on his back foot ever since he made that one key mistake at the very beginning of the game. You called it exactly right. That Bomber was providing so much value with him. And yes, he doesn't have the Ice Wiz, so it kind of makes it awkward on defense. But the Bomber was providing value, especially when it was paired with the Dark Prince, especially when it was paired with the Gob Cage. And with the Fisherman out of cycle on that one final push, tries to put the E-Barbs and tries to put the Heal Spirit down in time. Just not going to happen. Mohamed Light very aware of his opponent's Elixir, recognizing that he can play it at the bridge. And right here, we see it. Lightning getting down just in time. No Heal Spirit, and that's going to be an easy tower takedown.
Yeah, I mean, that was just a really, really rough moment for Viper when you saw that he barely survived that first defense, and then the second Electro Giant comes down. It's like, all right, man, game's over. You even saw Mohamed Light lean back in that golden chair knowing, okay, we're going to game number 3. And now comes that question again that we've been asking all day when you talk about comfort. Mohamed Light did kind of what we, not exactly what we expected, because he does so traditionally go to his comfort deck in game 2, especially if he's down a game, but he did go to the other deck that he's had the most success with this weekend. We still have Miner out there for Mohamed Light, and does it feel like he ever goes through an entire best of 3 without rocking Miner at least once?
I mean, I feel like, okay, if there's going to be any set that he does that, it's obviously going to be against someone who knows, who knows you inside and out.
Yeah.
I just don't see it happening. I feel like he's too talented with the deck. He knows how to play every single matchup there. And so, yes, even if your opponent predicts it, that's the thing. You're arguably the best Miner player in the world, so it doesn't really matter if he predicts it.
Yeah, I mean, and when you talk about this matchup and them being such good friends, maybe it is the time when Mohamed Light steers completely away from the Miner. Maybe he goes to, like, Lava Hound, right? Something just, I mean, maybe it's Lava Miner, right? So he still gets a little bit of Miner chip damage in there, but he just goes something so untraditional, unorthodox for him. But we've also seen the other side of that coin, and where it does not pay off because you're trying to be a little too tricky, a little too fancy.
Yeah, I always love the ideas behind getting, a little too tricky, a little too cute. But that's the thing, like, it just doesn't work out all too often. We saw it when it was Sandbox using the RG deck. It just doesn't work a lot of the time. So I love what I'm seeing in these first 4 cards from Mohamed Light. It's clear he's knowingly going in with Miner, knowing that his opponent is expecting that, and he's saying, I don't care if you predict this, you aren't going to be able to stop me.
Viper, on the other hand of it, looking like he might be going to what Mohamed Light just ran. And when you talk about those matchups, Josh, how much value can you really get from that Electro Giant pulling everything in when you look at the defenses on Mohamed Light's side of the board? We know it's going to deal with the Musketeer well. We know it's going to deal with the Spear Goblins. Will he have enough DPS to keep that E-Giant down?
Yeah, and I like this aggressive E-Giant approach. It is going to get a little bit of value, and it's kind of just going to test the water, see what he can get with these offensive pushes. Spear Goblins are going to come down as well as the Royal Delivery, and so it's going to be an easy defense so far. But he's kind of just feeling them out, trying to waste Elixir, so that way in double he's going to have, he's just trying to wait for double. Once he gets the double, once he gets the triple, that's when he can start making the pushes. So now he can set up with a defensive cage. And then at this point, we're already at double Elixir, and he's only down 400. This is not a bad spot for Viper right now.
Yeah, only down 400 in a very, very good Elixir spot. You see Mohamed Light look off, probably thinking about, all right, this is when things are starting to get a little bit dicey, a little bit hairy as we tick into double Elixir. Very easy for Viper to pull the trigger on that Lightning.
Yeah, and right here, are we going to see it? Okay, we do see the cage, and we do see the bridge bomber just trying to take it out, and then a nice little Dark Prince to get the Miner to re-target onto that. Just clean defense, and at this point, it's only a 300 HP difference. And then, you know, as it gets closer and closer, then we start seeing the either lightning cycle. Oh, wow. You see the E-drag right there. And you see Mohamed Light kind of look up.
Yeah.
That's not a card you see.
Yeah, the look on Mohamed Light was a pretty fun response, being very, very surprised to see the Electro Giant. But the Electro Giant doing good work here, and honestly, moving forward, those Spear Goblins are going to be something that Mohamed Light has to truly, truly protect. But for the moment, Mohamed Light doing exactly what he does, which is get minor chip damage, control this game, defend well, get his cycle all the way around, and use his cards to the utmost. Great delivery there.
Yeah, Viper, I'm not sure what he's expecting when he uses E-Dragon in this deck. I don't like that. Knowing that your opponent can go quick cycle, the Royal Deliveries are always going to get an insane amount of value every time it gets placed on the field. He can NATO things together, but at this point, he just mortars to the side, and so he's not really getting the value he's looking for. He is in a very, very difficult predicament, and I just don't know if he can crawl out of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's so tough, right? That Electro Giant is so slow. It does so much damage, but again, the Electro Giant being played at the bridge is usually a lot less effective than building pushes from the back. And with how heavy the deck is from Viper, with that E-Wiz being in there instead of the Baby Dragon, it does make it very difficult for him to build these Electro Giant pushes from the back. As you can see, he usually starts with support cards from the back, and then an E-Giant at the bridge.
Yeah, I mean, he's forcing out early bombers, and then he's going to be able to take it out with a log. I mean, there's just no answer for this if you're on Viper's side. He has to cycle the E-Dragon, and so the Musketeer is going to be able to easily take it out. And yes, the NATO kind of provides a little bit of value with that, but with 53 seconds left and your opponent having Miner and Fireball and Log and anything he wants to, we're going to see a quick little Fireball cycle. We see the frustration on Viper's face. This is game over, and Mohamed Light played this really well.
And Mohamed Light does what Mohamed Light does. Another reverse set sweep here against his good friend in Viper, and he does go to his comfort in game number 3, maybe making Viper guess a little bit there in game number 2. A very odd deck there from Viper in game 3, and honestly, it goes back to what you were talking about, which is, you know, before the set started, I think it was even when Ruben and Sam's set was going, which is just all about making that third deck choice really, really come through and be very, very, you know, a deck that you're very good with. And this deck, not only did he not play it great, but it also just wasn't that great when you talk about synergy and getting the cycle back around. It was very heavy.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you got to be careful when you use Mega Minion instead of Ice Wiz, because that's one less ground unit that you have when you're going against Mortar. And Mortar, I mean, you can kind of even make the argument that you don't even need Ice Wiz, because like you're just going to lose against Mortar if you go against it, and you're okay with that. But to say that you're okay with just losing to a Mortar deck going against Mohamed Light with Mortar and Miner available, it doesn't make sense to me. And I just, when it was Sandbox using that RG deck, I was okay with it, because, you know, you're trying to snipe certain things. Like, yes, you have the Fire Spirits, and no, they're not going to get that much value, but like you're putting in a conscious effort to try and give yourself a matchup. With this one, I just don't understand the idea behind it.
So we talk about matchups here, deck 1 versus deck 1 here from Mohamed Light and Viper, and this is where Viper was very, very much in control. Great fast cycle. Those Hog Riders were getting hits almost every single time they were dropped down, and if they weren't getting hits, they were baiting out negative Elixir trades for Mohamed Light, so he was never really able to get the offense pushed to get, or put together until that final maybe 20 seconds of gameplay, but by then Viper had already sealed and secured the victory. But it was deck 2 where things started to shift in the favor of Mohamed Light when he ran out of Electro Giant once again with the Mega Minion.
Yeah, there was that one time where the Fisherman was out of cycle and he goes in with the E-Giant at the bridge. Really good awareness on his end right there. And that's why I like decks like these for Mohamed Light. It's not cycle, but it still allows you to outplay. And so he was able to go aggressive, uses the lightning on the E-Barbs and takes out the tower. Clean defense all around from him. I just don't understand the Mega Minion in this deck. I mean, yes, he was still able to win, but it felt weaker. And so I want to know the idea behind using that card in that deck.
I think the biggest thing is when you look at the meta right now, Josh, Flying Machine is so popular, and those Electro Giant decks really struggle to get Lightnings on top of the units they need to take off the board. So maybe it's literally just to snipe Flying Machines in the game because they are so popular. I could be wrong there, but that does seem like a good way to get a positive +1 trade and get right on top of the unit that causes people a lot of trouble, especially once you get into triple Elixir.
Yeah, I really like that because, again, what I was saying earlier where, hey, I'm going against Mortar, I just auto lose. Obviously, not really the right mindset, but it's kind of what you have to do. Like when you're going against Mortar and your opponent is, you know, as talented of players like Muhammad Light, Samuel Basoto, Viper. These players are just not going to lose with matchups that are greater than 55-45, right? Like, yes, you can outplay, but at the end of the day, these players are so talented. They're going to be able to get back into the game. So I really like the idea of using Mega Minion, and I really like that effort to try and take out those Flying Machines. That's a great idea with that.
$4,000 goes to Viper along with 50 more points. Mohamed Light now in contention for $6,000 plus as we move into match 13 of the day between him and Samuel Basoto. Obviously, these guys have not played each other yet in this tournament, but very, very excited to see how they fare. Two of the best in the world, two of the best when you talk about fast cycle decks, and two of the best when you talk about ladder. This should be a very, very good match 13.
Yeah, I don't want to leave. And like this is gonna be one of those great games. The winner of this gets to play Ruben. I mean, this is phenomenal Clash Royale right now, and I'm just glad that I don't have to do another prediction because it kills me trying to predict some of these who's gonna win these games.
So we've got 3 players left battling it out for over $30,000. But first, let's take a look at a player that picked up 20 grand in first place last month. A no name that became the biggest name in CRL last month was Ta. Let's take a look at our player highlight.
今結構コロナウイルスの関係であまり外でご飯を食べれるっていう機会があまりなくて、そういう形でのお祝いはしてないんですけど、今高校2年生で学校行った時になんかサプライズみたいな感じでクラッカーでパンみたいな感じにされてるとめっちゃ嬉しかったです。
This is gonna do it. Ta has just won.
We have an unknown player from Who Are You to monthly champion. Well, I'll tell you right now, he's Ta, and he is now on the radar of this league.
こんにちは、日本出身のターです。4月のマンスリー決勝戦チャンピオンです。プレイし始めたきっかけは友達に一緒にやろうって言われてやったのがきっかけで、優勝するなんて全く思ってなかったです。はい。優勝するの全く思ってなくて、始めたら2年半前ぐらいです。2年半前ぐらいです。とりあえずグランドチャレンジっていう100エメラルドかかるんですけど、とりあえず上手い人と戦えるっていうモードがあって、それをたくさんしましたね。それぐらいですかね。あと上手い人とフレンドバトル機能を使ってフレンドバトルしてました。はい。好きなカードはアイスウィザードとトルネードってカードが結構好きですね。プレイスタイルは結構防衛から入ってめっちゃ防衛してから攻めるって感じで。
And Ta seems to have dethroned our number 1 seed in the 8th spot. An unknown comes into CRL Finals and takes down the German god that is Morten.
モルテン選手はもう、めちゃくちゃとりあえずクラロワが上手くて、あんまり当たりたくなくて、モーテン選手に勝った時はモーテン選手は結構昔から上手くてプロにも入ってて結構世界2位とか取ってるイメージがあって、自分より圧倒的格上の相手だから結構なんか実力の分ではまだまだそんなにないんですけど、デッキ選択は結構いい感じになって勝てたのがとりあえずめっちゃ嬉しかったですね。自分より上手い相手に勝てたのは結構自信ついて結構嬉しかった。でサンドボックス選手ももちろん上手いのはそうなんですけど、デッキ選択がめちゃくちゃ上手いんですよね、サンドボックス選手だからあんまり戦いたくなかったです。ゲームがより一層楽しくなりましたね。楽しくゲームをすることができるようになったっていうか、結構今までちょっと辛い思いをしつつゲームをしてた時があったんで、結構今は楽しくクラロワしてます。日本人なら、元プロのキックスに入ってたゆうや選手ですね。あとゆうや選手が一番尊敬してるっていうか、ゆうや選手多分めっちゃ 楽しいと思いつつやってて、通話とかした時も結構楽しそうにフレンドバトルとかしてくれて、いい人だなっていう、人柄もめちゃくちゃいいと思って、ゆうや選手尊敬してます。アドバイスめっちゃ上からみたいになるんですけど、自分でも優勝できたんで、めちゃくちゃクララはやってたらもう1年前ぐらいも普通に日本のプロチーム結構見てて YouTube で、距離遠いなと思いつつ見てて、自分も出たいなと思いつつ、けど今回そのなんて言うんだろう、プロチームは自体はあるけど、そのなんか誰でも参加一応できるよみたいな感じになって、参加資格誰でもあるっていうのはめちゃくちゃいいことだと思うし楽しいですね。改めましてターです。もしかしたらグラチャレで当たるかもしれませんね。これからも精一杯頑張りますので応援よろしくお願いします。
And welcome back. We have our top 3, no repeats in terms of those top 2 from last month, but congrats, Todd, one more time on that clean 20K. But someone else is taking that home today. And Andrew, I don't think we could ask for a better top 3. It's going to be hard-pressed to find a better top 3. Mohamed Light, Samuel Basoto, and Ruben. I mean, what a group.
Yeah, I mean, you just saw right there the true Cinderella story that was talking about watching CRL on YouTube, feeling like pro players were so far away. And a big part of it is because of top 3s like this, Rich. 3 of the biggest names in the game, champions all the way across the board. Mohamed Light and Samuel Basoto are first up with $6,000 on the line.
I mean, look, if you wonder if there's questions, there have been questions about whether or not this format leads us to the top players in the end. A lot of people have made their grumblings about how difficult it is. Well, when this is the top 3 you're left with, there really isn't a question about that anymore. Mohamed Light, Samuel Basoto. Mohamed Light, second time here. Samuel, third time here. The only crazy part here is that this is Ruben's first time to the top 8. But, of course, he's going to be in the final, and he's still going to end up being top 10 in the standings overall. So this is really, really fun to watch. And now we have Mo and Samuel, who are both playing some great games, but it feels like Mo's on the up and maybe Samuel's on the down right now.
It really does. When you talk about momentum and how much of a momentum game Clash Royale is, Mohamed Light does seem to have all of it in his favor at the moment. It never feels good to get dropped out of that winner's bracket, especially in the fashion that Samuel Basoto did. And now he has to come off of getting swept up at the top to coming down to Mohamed Light, who has just put on a clinic and 2 reverse sweeps in his last 2 sets. Not only is he warmed up today, but he's ready to go. He's played all different types of decks. He's come out with his comfort deck and not lost with it. He's come out with E-Giant when people expect it and played through it. This is a very, very scary Mohamed Light right now.
Well, you know, we talk about some of those, that decksmanship, the deck planning, and we just saw in that last matchup with Viper is how hard it is to game plan against Mohamed Light. My guess here, looking through what Mo's been playing, is that Electro Dragon you guys were curious about is because Mohamed Light has played so much P.E.K.K.A. Ram Rider with Inferno Dragon. And I still don't think that's a great choice against P.E.K.K.A. Ram Rider, but the Inferno Dragon been popular for Mo, and so you see that Electro Dragon coming in, but that just goes to show how difficult it is to game plan against Mohamed Light and Julesy as a team for this analysis, because they keep you guessing consistently.
And that's the other part of analysis, Rich, that we maybe don't talk about as much as you know, maybe the fun part, which is like, oh yeah, let's get a hard counter out there, but it's just as important to make sure that your opponent has no idea what you're running and tricking them, right? Tricking them into thinking you're going to go one way, going the other, and then you get another matchup advantage 2 games in a row. And when we're talking about CRL, if you get 2 matchup advantages, that's usually the set.
And take a look at the body language right now. Mohamed Light maybe a bit of a cheeky grin there for a second. Samuel Basoto certainly not liking what he's seen so far, and the rarely seen Cannon Cart making an appearance now after the big changes to it in the last balance update.
Yeah, Cannon Cart, it's very odd because it's still showing up in these kind of no-win condition decks. We saw them early on a few metas ago or even a year ago when we would see like no-win condition Cannon Cart decks that were basically just like spam, spam, spam. And obviously with the nerf to its speed, it's that much less threatening than it was before. But still, these decks, these overrun you decks, can be very difficult to deal with. When you get a good Heal Spirit in or a good Barb Barrel in, those Cannon Carts are still brutal when they get on tower.
Yeah, it'd be a very interesting question to see how Samuel deals with the early use of the Hog Riders, and then, of course, the spell cycle at the end. E-Barb's now not going to be in cycle. This one going to get picked up by the Skeletons, and the timing right now from Mohamed Light with the Skeletons to make sure they are used in the correct spot and not available for the Mother Witch to turn into offensive damage. Certainly working out well so far.
Yeah, really nice stuff from him there, and you saw that high knight come in late to turn everything back around. Basically perfect mitigation as Mo continues to chip away at this tower, and that's what he does. Earthquakes, logs, and usually miners, and all of a sudden that 2,500 HP is somehow ticking down to 0. Obviously no miner that's going to be happening, but those spells like in hot and heavy.
Early Tesla set up here, and the Bandit will go to get that off the board as we go into the final 20 seconds of regulation time. So far, the lead has been significant for Samuel, but that pressure is starting to build as the Elixir starts to flow more. The lead for Mohamed Light, and Samuel now trying to make a case of taking that one back.
A good connection with the Heal Spirit or a good Mother Witch from Samuel to take those Skeletons out of play could spell disaster for Mohamed Light. Obviously, right now, Mo is making it very, very difficult to pinpoint where those units are going to come down and get good Heal Spirits in, especially when they have to be used defensively. But Samuel just needs one good swing.
It's so hard right now for Samuel to defend these Hog Riders because he either has to have E-Barbs in cycle, which still is a bit of an overspend, sure you get a counter push, or he has to overspend much more significantly to stop Hog Rider shots, and we're seeing the results of that so far.
Yeah, just easy spell cycle. Log, plus Earthquake, plus Snowball. You get the Firecracker down there that's already 4 cards out, and you're back into your spell cycle.
And look at this, just trying to find some way to overload at the bridge and break through, but the breakthroughs simply are not happening right now for Samuel as we have 75 seconds left in sudden death overtime and another Hog here behind the Knight. And we'll see that should be enough to sneak on through and get one more shot.
Yeah, you see the frustration on Samuel's face. He just feels like he's run into a brick wall over and over again, not able to do anything different. Yes, the Bandit's going to get on top of that, but there's a Knight, there's Skeletons. He's probably back around to another Tesla soon. It's just so much control coming out from Mohamed Light. Samuel has no way of getting in.
A lot of patience needs to be shown right here, though. This is a dangerous moment. E-Barb's breaking through, only 3 Elixir. Mother Witch down, E-Barb's on tower, and the Earthquake does get in time. Samuel Basoto nearly threw a banana peel in the path of Mohamed Light's run, but Mo able to get that cycle in time.
The amount of work that Mohamed Light did in double and single Elixir really made it so that Samuel gets one more sequence around offensively. He's probably able to take that tower down. When you talk about triple Elixir and being able to overwhelm your opponent, and obviously the responses that Mohamed Light had, right? It's basically just Tesla, Knight, and Skeletons on defense because that Firecracker was getting fireballed out of existence every single time it came into play. So Mo Light did a very, very brilliant job of being in control. I mean, he's still got 1,800 HP with 1 minute left. If he was just any lower, or if there was 30 more seconds, I think Samuel would have had a real chance.
Well, the interesting thing, you talk about that Firecracker being fireballed off every time. One of the hard parts for Samuel in this matchup was literally every single exchange was a negative Elixir trade.
Yep.
4 on the 3 for the Firecracker, the overspends on defense, and then having to overspend, which means a ton of log value, a ton of Firecracker value that you fireball at the Firecracker, but it's this never-ending cycle of getting behind on Elixir, and Mohamed Light with a very, very good matchup and well played here.
What was great about Mohamed Light's matchup in that game as well was just, you talk about making those positive Elixir trades. Another thing that we talk about a lot is, overspending on defense or overcycling on defense and how that can really hurt you. But when your cards are as cheap as Mohamed Light's are, and when you're talking about what you get when you go 4 cards all the way back around is maybe just another Skeleton or another Tesla or another Log, it makes that so much more difficult to keep up with because every single time that cycle comes around, you're not breaking through. You're making negative Elixir trades, and at least 2 spells have come down on your Princess Tower.
Yeah, very interesting choice here on the side of Samuel Basoto as well, with going for a no-win condition deck in this situation. And we've seen that the Tesla and Mortar both are 2 cards that Mo goes for a lot, and he stacks and just created a barrier for Samuel. So now he has to go back to the drawing board and find out what he does up against a guy who's playing kind of some of his best games of the weekend.
Yeah, right? You're trying to think about what does Samuel Basoto come out with now. He struggled with a lot of different win conditions. Mohamed Light has played him all the way across the board. We haven't seen any graveyard yet today, and I know now that, Samuel Basoto at least doesn't have Mother Witch. So I don't know, maybe Mohamed Light goes to Graveyard. I'd like to maybe see a bit of a swerve on a win condition right now, because just trying to play your game against Mohamed Light, it just isn't working at the moment. He's living in the future, it seems.
Well, it's interesting. You know, Mother Witch is still on the board in the opposite direction, which makes it dangerous for Samuel.
Yep.
But I wouldn't mind seeing Samuel go Graveyard either in Game 2 or Game 3. Maybe in Game 3 if Mother Witch comes out. Because we've only seen Poison run by Mohamed Light once throughout this entire weekend. It's primarily been Fireball, Rocket, and Lightning. So there might be an option here to kind of go a little bit out of the current meta. And right now, Samuel going kind of with, I mean, it might even be the same deck we just saw, one with this Hog Cycle.
See a bit of a smile from Mohamed Light as that Hog Rider plus Skeletons come out for Samuel. E-Giant down early on for Mohamed, and now it's going to be all about defense for Basoto at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, you see the 8 Elixir on the board and 3 behind in the hole, but that does give a slight 1 Elixir advantage right now to Mohamed Light. We'll see if he can make anything of it as that Tesla gets close to about 2/3 health. Lightning comes in perfectly timed. Very, very nicely played here by Mo.
Yeah, really, really tough Lightning there. Tesla does come right back around, so nice job there. And you see Mohamed Light give a fist pump when that Tesla comes down. He knows that Samuel way overspent on that second Tesla, and because of that, a Prince charged up on the tower and down to 258, and that look on Samuel's face basically just said goodbye to CRL this month.
Yeah, I mean, he knows it. He knows it. Yeah, it's one of those things where you sit there going, but I have skeletons. Skeletons are in my deck. How are they not available right now? And well, when you're that thirsty in that moment, we just saw the skeletons get thrown onto the Electro Giant. Maybe it was for Cycle, who knows? But they were basically thrown into the abyss against the E-Giant, and meant nothing there for the Prince in the opposite lane.
Yeah, great job there by Mohamed Light, raising the overspend, recognizing the cards being out of cycle, and just a brutal hit with only 9 seconds left before we get into double Elixir.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say that the result here would have definitely been different, but putting the skeletons that are going to do 0 things onto an Electro Giant just seems like it was a bit of a rough one there, especially considering how popular Prince is in this deck right now.
You see Samuel Basoto miss the pickup there with the Valkyrie. Prince takes that Princess Tower down, so we see him go opposite lane with 45 seconds remaining, just trying to make anything happen, but that is going to do it, and we will have a final between Mohamed Light and Ruben, who just yesterday we saw Ruben 2-0 Mohamed Light.
And Ruben does have the 1 match advantage. Ruben's still in the winner bracket, so Ruben has a life to give, so to speak. This is going to be amazing. I mean, hats off to Samuel Basoto on making the monthly final 3 times in a row. Really wonderful performance by him. But now we're moving on to what I know we're both very excited about. And we're going to talk about this a lot, so let's not beat it too much yet. But we're going to have at least 1, if not 2 BO3s between the top 2 consensus players in the world.
Yeah, Ruben and Mohamed Light coming your way next. Not bad for a washed player in Ruben to still be in those finals with a life to give, going against Mohamed Light, our former champion. And what I think is so crazy about this month's finals is how good a player can look in one set and how dominant they can get in another set. And they can be back-to-back.
Yeah, I mean, and this is that moment right here. Skeletons onto an Electro Giant, that's like a bee sting to a bull. It ain't going to do much. And you see the moment they're out of cycle, there's no Elixir for any other card that will stop a Prince. 0, you can't do it. He was at 1 or like a half an Elixir, and every other card that he would stop a Prince with costs at least 3. And those skeletons got thrown into nothing, and that's one that Sam's going to want back.
So yesterday, Samuel Basoto goes 4-1 on the day. Today, he goes 0-4. A very, very rough turnaround for him, and all that on the back of incredible performances from his opponents in Ruben and Mohamed Light, who will be our grand finals. And yeah, I mean, you talk about overspending, you talk about those skeletons going off into nothing. Maybe it was a cycle thing, like he was trying to get back around to the Tesla, but Mohamed Light, being as good as he is, he goes, okay, cool, skeletons are out, Tesla's out. You literally have nothing to defend me.
Yeah, that was definitely a pretty brutal moment. And here's game number 1 with an interesting choice here on Samuel Basoto's side. I mean, look, you're taking the 2 most popular quote-unquote broken cards here in Mother Witch and E-Barbs that, you know, people talk about you need to abuse these 2 cards when you can. And just did not seem like he set himself up for success in this moment.
No, I mean, when you talk about the deck that we're seeing from Samuel Basoto, I mean, the hardest thing is that we've got only one card that truly does splash damage. And even though there is a lot of single target DPS, it's all focused. And when you look at Mohamed Light's decks, he has so many great ways to recycle, retarget, and get another unit back down to soak up those single target shots. The ability to get a Knight and Skeletons down at the beginning of a defense and then get them around again halfway through the defense was why you saw Samuel Basoto just never, ever able to break through until the final 20 seconds when Mohamed Light was ready to cycle an Earthquake for the win.
Well, again, you're getting back to how hard it is to game plan against Mohamed Light, right? How hard it is because he's opened up heavier typically in games number one. He opened up with Electro Giant, opened up yesterday with Royal Giant, with Royal Hogs at one point, and that deck might have had a much better chance against any of those three. But again, the variance, not just in deck selection, but in deck order, has been great and made it very difficult for his opponents.
And then we talk about this matchup here. Mohamed Light plays through what could have been a difficult matchup. You know, obviously able to create a lot of opposite lane pressure with that Hog Rider. Good fast cycle from Samuel Basoto. Good single target DPS with the Tesla, the Archers, and even that delivery coming in. But you talk about overspending early on, getting too aggressive defensively, and it made it so this game, Mohamed Light didn't even have to think about after he dropped that first Prince down.
Yeah, that was just a total. That was a moment where everyone's watching that. You know, like when you start to close your car door and then you realize halfway as it's slamming shut, the keys are inside. Yep. That really has to feel like what it was for Samuel. He put as soon as that Prince went down, he was like, "No, but my keys!" And now he's stuck waiting for AAA. So that was a brutal moment there.
And that's why you saw that fist pump from Mohamed Light. And that, again, lets you know how in tune he is with this game. So Mohamed Light, he ends up having a rough start yesterday. I mean, he starts off 2-0, but then gets 2-0'd by Ruben, and now we're back to that rematch after he's climbed all the way through the gauntlet that is our lower bracket. Now the least that he can walk away with, Rich, is 10 grand.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly not a bad weekend to walk away with 10K, but of course, you'd love to walk away with 20, and if Mo can be the first person to win two of these, that would be impressive. And, you know, I don't know if we can necessarily call this a referendum on who is the #1 player in the world, but you do have the top two players in the world. Ask any professional in the game right now, and these are the two best. And it's a question of who do you think? And, you know, we've taught AC and Eric, our co-casters, both say that Ruben's the best. If Mo can outplay here and win both of these in a row, because he does have to win twice now to be our monthly championship, if he can do that, there's going to be a very strong argument that he's #1 in the world.
Yeah, I mean, if Mohamed Light actually takes the win if we go through our grand finals and then our super grand finals, because as we said, Ruben has a life to give, that definitely puts him in that #1 spot. But when you talk about predictions coming into this first BO3, I'm going to say that, you know, Ruben will win this overall. It feels impossible for Mohamed Light to take two best-of-3s off of him back-to-back. But you know what? Just for fun, I'm gonna go with Mo Light in this first best-of-3. He's gonna be my prediction in this first best-of-3. I think he's got the momentum in his favor. He's playing very, very well right now. But I just think it's too much to ask to beat Ruben in 4 games, right? It's just so much.
You know, it's interesting. I kind of take it the opposite way. I'm picking Ruben here in this first one, and I think Ruben. I actually put it on Twitter that I thought the order for the 1, 2, 3 was going to be Ruben, Mo, and Samuel. So I'm partway there so far. I think Ruben wins this first one, and I think if Mo wins the first one, that at that point I think the momentum, see what I did there, switches to him very, very heavily, and he'll take the whole thing. But I do think Ruben wins it here and closes the show out.
Yeah, so those are our predictions. I'm going Mo Light in our 13th matchup here, and Rich is taking Ruben, our basically perfect competitor. You know, he was perfect in qualifiers. I think he's lost 2 games this entire week, or 1 game this entire weekend at finals. And, you know, like I was saying in that last time we saw him out, was just he's doing it with every win condition, Rich. He is all the way across the board. There is no way to game against him. Whereas someone like Mohamed Light, we know he's going to bust out Mortar Miner at some point. We know he's going to come out with E-Giant, most likely in that second game. He's done it, I think, 3 times already. How do you even begin? How do him and Julesy even begin to strategize against Ruben?
I mean, look, I'm not betting against Julesy for deck picking right now. He's been phenomenal this weekend. Yeah. He's been one step ahead of everybody. But what you have here are not just the 2 best players in the world, but you have those two best players with excellent support systems. Julesie's doing a great job with Molite and has been doing that throughout this entire 2021 run. On the other side of it, you have Team Queso, which we've talked about for years, has one of the best support systems in all of Clash Royale. And you know that Ruben right now is in the lab working up a game plan for this last one. So, I mean, you cannot reach, in terms of this format with this version of CRL, you cannot reach a better matchup than what we're having at this moment right now.
No, in this moment, these are the arguably #1 players in the world for CRL. So that's what's coming your way, guys. Maybe 2 best of 3s, definitely 1 best of 3. If Ruben takes it, he'll walk away with $20,000, first place on the weekend, and a very, very good kickoff to the rest of his season. A guy that we have seen very, very little of this year so far, for someone that we were expecting the utmost out of at the end of 2020. He's our former world champion.
He had a pretty good run in the first round of CRL, and then just a little bit quieter the last two. But again, quiet for Ruben is still coming into this weekend number 14 on the overall rankings, right? That's the crazy part, is we're like, where is he? Top 20. So it's so crazy to put it in that context. And this, of course, no matter what happens for Ruben, he's going to move up the rankings significantly, take a big jump into the top 10. But on the other side of it, Mohamed Light comes into the weekend already the overall points leader in CRL, and now has put himself in number 2. And I don't have the math in front of me, Andrew. I know that you know that I love the math. I don't have the math in front of me, but I believe that no matter what happens, Mohamed Light exits this weekend still in control of CRL.
I believe you are correct about that. And this actually goes back and alludes to a point that you were making earlier on with some of the rumblings in the community as the CRL 2021 was starting about, you know, is this really going to be the best in the world? What kind of competition are we going to get? It's open to everyone, blah, 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 blah. And when you look at the leaderboard, it really is exactly what you said. It is truly the best players in the world at the top. That's the
can we
only
get
way
that
to do
leaderboard?
it. Yeah, I would
I
love
just want
to
to go
see
through
the
it right now.
leaderboard while we're waiting. Yeah, if we're sitting here waiting for them to pull decks, sounds like production is going to get on that. But you talk about the names on this leaderboard, Rich, you know basically all of them. You do know all of them.
Yeah, literally every single name on here is a world-class player who you know. I mean, you get down to the last 2 players, Osama, the 3 Musky God, and Furkan Arabasi. Like, these are all guys who you know. But look at that. Look at this top 10 and tell me this isn't a legitimate list. If you were just making a list of the top 10 players in the world, that this isn't a fairly legitimate list. Igor, Molite, Morton, Line, Samuel, Sandbox. And then the way Anaban and Viper have been playing on ladder in particular, like this is a really phenomenal list. And then the only thing that's going to change here is that Ruben's going to overtake at least Viper on here, and now the list gets even better.
Yeah, and as of this moment right now, we would be seeing all of these guys fighting it out in contention to go to World Finals. You know, these are a handful of those people that will most likely be there. I mean, honestly, it feels like probably the top 10 have basically already secured their spot. I'm not going to say that that's 100% guaranteed yet because we are only about halfway through, but to think that they would fall off that much in the following months and not get any points, and that some 8 people out there would just continue to win every single month from here on out does seem a little bit crazy. So already starting to see our playoff picture come into form just a hair, just a little bit. You can start to, pull for your favorite players that will most likely be there as of right now.
Yeah, and you get that top 24 gets that guaranteed spot. Remember that the remaining players, though, trying to make that top 32, out of that from 26 to 32, they get into the play-in qualifier. So there's still openings there. But you look at the difference between, the very, very top where it's 400-something points, and then at the bottom where you're in the 200s, and think of how many points you get from one weekend win. Right, 100 points just for the win, not to mention the points you get on the way. So anybody who's in right now, even in the hundreds in points, if you have 100-something points right now, you have one phenomenal month, and you are suddenly you're contending for a top 24 spot.
Yeah, and kind of to look at the other side of that, someone like Ta, who did have first place, but as he said in his video, has struggled a little bit since winning and a little bit before winning. He's a guy that still has to work his way up there and secure his spot in the World Finals, even though he is a monthly champion. You know, it isn't secured if you can only do it the one time, right? Those one-hit wonders. Some people are talking about Mini Minter and whether or not we will see him at the end of the year at World Finals. And I would love to. He's come into our monthly finals a couple times being the #1 spot, or at least very, very high up there. But, you know, if he doesn't keep continuing to place and if we don't see much of him at the finals over the next few months, we might not see him at World Finals when it felt like at the beginning of the year he was a shoo-in.
Well, I'm very curious to see what happens as we get into our last couple of monthly finals. Because, again, we are halfway through. We have 4 more to go after this one. And we are going to have one more balance change. I believe, don't quote me on it, but I believe the way that the timing works out, the next quarterly balance change will be before we get to at least the last, not the last 2 monthly finals. Again, don't quote me on that, guys. I don't know when it's coming. So, but I think that's how the timing works out. And I know that for some players, Mini Minter being one of them, this set of balance changes that's led more towards the heavier, slower, beat-down decks and away from cycle has presented a lot of challenges. And so there's some players who were doing great in the first couple of months who've had a lot of struggles here in these next couple of months. So very curious to see if some players are able to make a sort of a comeback, assuming that balance change does come before the last couple of qualifiers.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about evolving and adapting with and to the meta, right? And we're seeing the shift of that already here at CRL. We're starting to see more cards come in, less cards come in that we saw at the beginning of the season. You know, that Royal Giant, Heal Spirit, Fisherman deck was something that was basically always being used in tournament play by someone at least at one point or another. It's become a little bit less popular. We've talked a lot today about Graveyard and how it really does feel like Graveyard has found its sweet spot where people aren't defending and looking out for it, but it's still being underutilized. So I really, really like, and again, you talk about someone who's living in or ahead of the meta. You talk about Ruben throwing that Prince in there. He's one of the few people in the tournament who has run Graveyard, and I believe he ran P.E.K.K.A. Graveyard, which is something that Eric and I saw a lot of at GameStars League this last week because Poison's not in as much, and that P.E.K.K.A. is a great counter to some of the strongest cards that are being overutilized right now.
Mother Witch is just so scary right now, Andrew.
I know,
mean,
man.
I think the game plan, if you think that you want to run Graveyard at some point, remember you have 4 decks and you only have to use 2 or 3 of them. I think the game plan is put together a Graveyard deck, and if you see that Poison gets played, you see Mother Witch gets played, go ahead and pull the trigger there when you think that you've finally gotten the real barriers to entry out of the way. But, you know, just between some of the changes to the decks to the cards that really propped up Graveyard, like Cannon Cart and like Bomb Tower, the 2 primary archetypes were built around those 2 cards, and then, of course, the rise of Mother Witch. It's just maybe a welcome tough meta here for Graveyard, considering that there was, I don't know, maybe a year-long run where you couldn't see a BO3 without Graveyard in it.
Right, and now it feels like we're going to go through maybe the entire second day of this CRL weekend without seeing Graveyard once, unless Ruben wants to bring it out right now, which is exactly what we are waiting on. Right now, Ruben and Mohamed Light are submitting their decks. It sounds like there's been duplicate decks once again, which I wonder, when you're getting duplicate cards this late in the competition, what does that say about your mental game, and who is it that's making these mistakes, and why? Why is it happening here in the grand finals where you don't already have your decks put in place?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I mean, part of that might be that these 2 players also already faced each other, and they didn't necessarily plan to face each other twice, so now they're going and retooling what their deck is going to be. You know, I mean, I don't know how well these guys prepare. We've seen in the locker rooms, so to speak, or in the waiting rooms for CRL, the war rooms, if you want to call them that, teams come out with binders based on breaking down matchups, and if it's this matchup in this game, here are the deck selections we're going for. And I wonder if they've gone to that same extent here, where they have that prepared, and maybe they did for the first matchup of Mo versus Ruben, but not for matchup 2 and potentially matchup 3.
Yes, exactly. Potentially 3 matchups between Ruben and Mohamed Light. Ruben 2-0s Mohamed Light in their first matchup. Now, their second matchup, if Ruben does win, will take $20,000, and first place, Mohamed Light will take 10 in second place. And like we just said, if Mohamed Light wins, we will go to that third best of 3 between the 2 arguably best in the world, in which it does feel like a complete reset. And that's why you're saying that if, you know, Ruben takes this, then he's obviously going to take the tournament. But if Mohamed Light wins this set, Rich, you're thinking he's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 sets in a row, 2 of them being back-to-back against Ruben.
That's my take on it. I think Ruben wins the first BO3, but if Mohamed Light wins this first BO3, it does feel like it's going to be hard to stop him running downhill there. And we are getting an update from League Operations that due to a delay here on the part of one of the players might end up being disqualified. So a forfeit. So we're waiting to hear if that's the ruling or not. I truly hope that's not the ruling, because I want to see these guys play pretty much more than anything right now. So, let's hope that that's not the way it rolls out. I want to see these guys play so bad, Andrew. I don't know if the replay booth has it, but if they do have the replay packages from the first matchup of Mo and Ruben, I'd love to go back and kind of review some of how it went down in the first round, because of course Ruben was all over that. So I'll give them a moment, see if they do have that package laid up. But yeah, I do hope that we get to go.
Staring at our faces might be good. But you know what? We do have our new gear. We do have our new swag. So it's not bad being on camera here. And yes,
yeah, check it out.
Yeah. Look at all this good stuff that Rich has got going on in the background. I do love the new setup. Absolutely. And I think as much as it would be horrible, this is the top of the top. This is CRL. This is the NFL. This is the NBA. Get it together. Get your decks together. If you are literally in the grand championship, the grand finals, and you are about to be disqualified because your decks aren't ready, come on.
Yeah,
you need your coach. You need your analyst. What's going on?
All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and throw something up here for you guys right now. Stick around. We'll be back in just a few minutes where we have a decision on, we'll either have a game or we will have a shocker of an ending to this final.
We'll be back.
Okay, well, not the ending that we expected, but due to repeated problems with decks, where every deck set now multiple times submitted by one of our players has included repeat cards, we are getting word now that Mohamed Light is disqualified, and your monthly final winner is Ruben. So I was right, but not in the way that I'd hoped, honestly, here, Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, I never like losing at anything, even if it is predictions. I think this is probably the easiest $10,000 that Mohamed Light has probably ever made, and maybe even the easier $20,000 that Ruben has ever made. It's a bit of a bummer, but it is exactly what we were just saying, Rich. This is CRL. Get it together. Get your decks ready. These are the grand finals. It's a $30,000 match. You can't delay stuff because you're not prepared. You have to keep up with the program. Ruben was ready every time that he needed to go. Mohamed Light was not today. And as much as it sucks, because I love Mohamed Light, I love watching him play, and I know everyone in the space wanted to see that best of 3 happen, we have to hold up the integrity that is CRL and this competition.
Yeah, this is definitely not the way that I think Ruben wanted to win either, and definitely not the way we wanted to finish off the show. But in the end, like you're saying, this is professional Clash Royale. This is for 20. If I told you for $10,000, Andrew, that you need to submit 4 decks that don't have any repeat cards, I think you'd get it done. So, this is definitely not the result anyone wanted to have, but it's the result that the league operations has decided on after just not being able to live up to his obligations here.
Yeah, that's it. So now we see Ruben take that $20,000, that 100 points, and we will get a check-in on all things that are the leaderboard standings and things like that. And you know what? If we talk about the performance, Ruben was the only guy this weekend that has not lost a set. He was the only undefeated person in CRL May of 2021.
Yeah, that he was. He was phenomenal all the way through. And after, that Swiss bracket was a tough road for him. Wasn't easy there, but group play, absolutely great in the top 32. And then here, just brilliant as you'd expect. So hopefully we'll get this matchup in its full entirety at some point in the future. And to be honest, with the level of play these two guys have been bringing, you expect to see this again, if not during a monthly final, at least maybe during World Finals. But we'll have to wait for that big firepower sometime in the future.
So as we are going to take a look at our global standings in just a moment, remember, as you heard Taz say earlier today, you could be competing here at CRL. It used to be only for the pros, used to be only for organizations. CRL might have been something that you've just watched on YouTube for years, but now you could win over $20,000, be battling for over $1.5 million on the year. All you got to do is pick up your phone, play games, and get to the top 1,000 on ladder. Sounds easy, but it's really quite difficult.
Yeah, you, not us. We're not. We have no shot at making it, but I know that there's a bunch of you out there, and this is my favorite thing about CRL this year. We're talking about the positives of CRL in 2021. The number one comment we've always got in the chat, Andrew, is I can beat these guys. Well, this is your chance to prove it, and your chance to prove it with $1.6 million in total on the line this season. So you don't just prove that you're as good as you think you are, but also take home a pile of cash on top of it. But of course, right now, it's looking like that pile of cash is going to go to some of the most experienced and most talented players in the world. And we've seen those levels, those differences. And man, I can't wait to look at these final standings, because we are going to get a pretty good picture halfway through the season, Andrew. And I guess we're going to get those in about 30 seconds or so. But we're halfway through the season, and it feels like we have almost no surprises.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest surprise this season was it took this long for us to talk this extensively about Ruben, right? We were wondering where he was for the last few months. The first month, as he said, he kind of reared his head in the competition. But, I think for a while there, we were like, all right, whatever, give the guy a break. He just won the world championship. Give him a few months to get back in the groove. Maybe he wants to travel. Maybe he wants to relax, whatever. Let the guy sit back and enjoy himself. But then it became this moment of like, yo, where's Ruben? When are we going to see Ruben? And you saw how quick the community was to say he's washed, he's done. But I think the biggest surprise, other than the fact that we didn't get to watch our grand finals, is that we are only now talking about the greatness that is Team Queso's Ruben, and we are halfway through our season.
Yeah, halfway through means a lot more to be played. And also, of course, at some point, potentially a big meta shift as well. So it's going to be very curious to see how we go. And, part of that also is that the plan, as it's been announced in the past, is quarterly balance changes. And I don't know where they balance out, but it feels like one of them will probably come before we get to our last monthly finals. And then possibly the next one, I don't know if it'll be before or after World Finals, but it'll be very curious to see how those things all play out.
So taking a look here at our leaderboard, you see, even with the loss, Mohamed Light still is in first place by an entire victory, an entire first place finish, 100 points ahead of Samuel Basoto, who's got 420 points. Then we see Ruben, Morton, and of course Kazardy or Igor at 400 there. So you look at this list, they're all names in the space. They're all great, famous pros, some of the best that we've ever seen in CRL, and that is why this leaderboard is exactly what we're seeing. I imagine we'll be seeing over 80% of these guys at our World Finals.
I mean, I think if you polled anybody involved in competitive Clash, Andrew, that those are the 5 names people would say are the 5 best players on the planet. And it's not because they're on this leaderboard. If you did this back in December of 2020, they would have said these are the 5 best players. And here they are, Ruben now in the top 5. Pretty accurate here. And Ruben now with a big jump there from 14th place to 5th place. overall on our standings. So a good spot there. And of course, you see the additional points, 275, the bottom number there for that top 20. So, you know, there's still the top 32 within range, but some of these players really starting to create a gap between themselves and the rest of the pack.
Yeah, and Sandbox, as you can see, is really making a name for himself. Very, very excited to see more out of Tribe Superstar as we wrap up the May finals and look forward into the next month of competition. Rich, they're telling us that we got to get out of here. Do you have any final thoughts on the day?
This was, barring the resolution here, this was one of the best days of competition we've seen. The amazing gameplay that we saw in that Sandbox defense in his first game when he ended up losing the overall set. Some of what we saw out of Viper was phenomenal. Ruben playing top of his game. Mohamed Light, when he did play, playing brilliantly. This was a wonderful, wonderful Sunday, and it's got me very excited for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I have to add to that is I love watching the fact that these guys are all friends. You see the pros going up against each other. You saw Samuel and Mo. You saw Mo and Viper. You know that these guys have all played each other hundreds and hundreds of times. Yes, the day didn't finish the way we wanted, but you know we're going to see rematches of everyone that we just saw here in May. I cannot wait. I cannot wait for June.
Well, we'll be back here in a month with our next monthly qualifier. Maybe it'll be you here competing. Either way, the four of us will be here. Eric Benamou, Joshua, AC Sharon, my good friend Andrew Guy. I'm Rich Slayton. It's starting to get summer, guys, so make sure you wear your sunscreen. We'll see you back here in June. Take care.
Bye, guys.